Chapter 1159. However, Yu Qianqiu had no intention of leaving. He pulled on Nongzhu's arm, not letting him move. His face was ashen as he looked at the tragic scene in front of him. The green fireballs raining down from the sky started to circle around the two of them when they were 2 meters above their heads. The flames that were fanned by the others also circled around them, unable to touch the two of them at all. Nongzhu suddenly understood. This guy was an expert in controlling fire, so he naturally wasn't afraid of these things. Nongzhu saw that there were people who were constantly escaping and asking for help, but Yu Qianqiu was pulling him to avoid the people who were rushing over to ask for help. Nongzhu immediately said anxiously, "You can control fire, quickly save them." "There are so many people, how many can I save?" Yu Qianqiu's face was dark as he said, "Once I make a move, I will definitely attract more people to come over for help, and we will immediately be discovered by Demon King 3 Knights. Do you think we should escape or stay to save them then? If we don't escape, we will die, but if we escape, we will be leaving them in the lurch. You and I can't bear the infamy of so many people's lives. Besides, unless you and I can bring them all away, they won't be able to escape even if we extinguish the fire on their bodies. How do you think I should save them?" "You, twisted logic." Nongzhu was so angry that she didn't say anything. She seemed to be blaming Yu Qianqiu for being too ruthless. Just as the two of them were struggling, Wu Feng saw that the situation was hopeless and knew that there was no meaning in continuing to resist. He grabbed Wang Qing and shook the wind god's staff in his hand. A swirling black wind wrapped around the two of them, and they flew away from the raining fireballs. When the fireballs touched the hurricane that was protecting them, they were immediately deflected. The two of them passed through the wailing crowd and quickly disappeared. It was equivalent to abandoning their subordinates and running away. Demon King 3 Knights watched the two of them leave and casually pulled on the scarlet cape behind him. A gust of air flowed between heaven and earth, and the rain of fire immediately stopped. The green fire clouds in the sky turned black again and quickly dissipated. The sky cleared and the sun rose. The green sea of fire on the ground was instantly annihilated, leaving behind a charred patch. The green flames on everyone's bodies also disappeared in an instant, and those who were lucky enough to keep their lives quickly fled. The demonic army looked at Demon Lord 3 Knights with even more respect. Such a method was already considered a divine ability. Yan Zhuixing's eyes became fanatical, and he began to imagine the day when he would be able to do whatever he wanted. Demon King Li Tian took a step forward and cupped his hands at Demon Monarch 3 Knights. "Demon Monarch. Those two have divine artifacts in their hands. Leaving them alive will be a disaster. We can't let them escape. Should we pursue them while we're still victorious?" "Divine artifact? Humph. Even if the divine artifact falls into their hands, it won't be of much use. If I want to keep them here, do you think they can escape?" Under the gradually dissipating black clouds, Demon Monarch 3 Knights stood with his arms crossed. The cape on his shoulders fluttered in the wind. He looked into the distance and said indifferently, "I want them to abandon the masses and escape. I want the people of the immortal and netherworld to understand one thing: don't listen to other people's instigation and easily gather together to resist our demonic army. Because no one in the immortal and netherworld will truly think for them. If they want to live, they have to obediently submit to our demonic path. If we kill the two of them, wouldn't that be helping their reputation? Instead, it would have the opposite effect when we unify the 3 realms." He paused, then narrowed his eyes and sneered, "Didn't you say that the two of them are related to the netherworld god estate? I was just about to force the two of them to escape into the netherworld god estate. In the future, I will find an excuse to find fault with those old fellows. Today, since I have returned to the 3 realms, I will not allow any power that can resist our demonic path to exist in the 3 realms. The netherworld god estate is no exception." As he said this, he slightly lowered his head and looked down. "Army, attack and quickly chase down those stragglers. After that, immediately massacre all the major sections. I want to kill them and make them tremble in fear. In the future, when they see our demonic path, they will obediently bow down to us. This bunch of self-proclaimed righteous people. If you treat them like dogs, they will be dogs. If you treat them like humans, they will immediately become humans. So, don't show them any mercy. Of course. Don't kill all those stragglers just now. Today's matter needs to be publicized. We can't let those two fellows escape for nothing. First, control the entire immortal realm and the 72 realms of the human world. There are many cultivators in the netherworld. When the reinforcements from the demon realm arrive, we will sweep through the entire netherworld. Demon Monarch 3 Knights waved his hand, indicating for everyone to carry out his orders. Yes. The heroes of the demon realm obeyed and quickly led their armies to attack. After Nongzhu was dragged to the ground by Yu Qianqiu to hide, she immediately said unhappily, "What do you want now?" Of course it's to save people. We can't let the demon realm kill everyone. Yu Qianqiu sneakily popped his head out from behind a large rock. After looking around, 2 purple flames rose from his palms and clenched his fists. The dark clouds in the sky that were about to dissipate immediately surged and rolled again. Not long after, they once again gathered into a sky full of dark clouds. In the blink of an eye, the dark clouds became filled with lightning and thunder, and the sound of thunder rumbled in all directions. The demon Dao armies that had set out in pursuit quickly stopped upon receiving the order. They looked at each other in dismay as the gloomy scene returned to normal. The various demon kings turned to look at Demon Lord 3 Knights, not knowing if he had any new instructions. Even Eunuch Li and Yan Zhuixing looked at Demon Monarch 3 Knights in confusion. However, Demon Monarch 3 Knights was slightly stunned. Then, he looked around with a serious gaze and said with a rumbling voice, "I wonder which expert has arrived? Since that's the case, why don't you come out and meet me? Why hide?" The moment he said this, everyone immediately understood that it wasn't Demon Monarch 3 Knights, but another expert had arrived. Everyone immediately looked around. "It's me, your old man, who has arrived. I won't come out to meet you. What can you do to me?" Yu Qianqiu hid behind a large rock and snickered. Nongzhu looked at the sky with a dumbfounded expression and then looked at him. She immediately understood that he was up to no good. "What are you doing?" Nongzhu came over with a curious expression. "Naturally to stop the demon realm's massacre and save people. At the same time, I'm taking revenge for my dead comrades." "Damn it. That 3rd Knight's killer move is powerful, but so is mine. I'll let him have a taste of it today." Yu Qianqiu snickered again. Seeing that the lightning in the sky was almost ready, he clenched his fists. Bang, 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 countless thunderbolts burst forth at the same time, causing the earth to rumble. Countless thunderbolts exploded between heaven and earth, dazzling the eyes. Innumerable thunderbolts bombarded the densely packed army of the devil world in the sky, shaking the heavens and the earth. For a moment, endless screams resounded. This time, it was not the people of the immortal underworld demon-killing alliance, but the people of the demon realm. No one had ever seen so many lightning bolts. They were denser than a spider web. No matter where they ran, there was no place to hide. They could only fight with all their might. People with cultivation like Demon King Li Tian didn't think that these lightning bolts were very powerful. They just couldn't see clearly because of the strong light. Their eyes were blurred, but they still had to keep their eyelids open. They were afraid that someone would take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on them. How could a person who could communicate with the Dharma of heaven and earth only have this little ability? Those with slightly lower cultivation could also withstand it, but those with lower cultivation could not withstand so many lightning strikes. Each and every one of them had to deal with it painfully and wearily. As for those with lower cultivation, they really couldn't resist too many lightning bolts. They screamed and fell to the ground one by one. "Bai Changchun! Come out!" Jean Tai, who was protected by a golden light, suddenly looked around and roared, "Bai Changchun! I know it's you. What's the point of hiding?" Bai Qi also narrowed his eyes and looked around. However, there were so many strong lights that it was hard to see clearly. The two of them had seen this scene in the Immortal Palace. They had always thought that this was Bai Changchun's method. Eunuch Li waved his hand to block the furious lightning for Yan Juexing. When the three knights' demon lord heard Jin Tai's call, he allowed the lightning to strike his body. He directly flew above Jin Tai and shouted, "Are you sure it was done by that Bai Changchun who came from the human world?" He had also heard Yan Juexing mention the number one expert in the human world, Bai Changchun. Bai Qi and I have personally experienced this move of his. It can't be wrong, Jin Tai said with certainty. Bai Qi also nodded to confirm. I want to see what kind of person he is. Demon King Three Knights snorted coldly. He opened his tiger eyes and said, "Demon eyes." His eyes instantly turned red and shot out two seemingly solid red beams of light. They pierced through the countless flashing lightning bolts and scanned the surroundings. Nongzhu, who was squatting behind a big rock with Yu Qianqiu, asked curiously, "Why did Jin Tai call out Old Bai's name? Did Old Bai teach you this move?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled and was about to speak when he suddenly froze. He saw two red beams of light that looked like lasers in the sky. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "What's this?" He turned around and stood up, poking his head out from behind the rock to take a look. Nongzhu also poked her head out to join in the fun. Demon King Three Knights' demon eyes scanned the surroundings. He immediately discovered that there was a misty purple aura that couldn't be seen with the naked eye in the distance. The demon eyes quickly moved towards the source of the aura and immediately saw two heads poking out from behind a big rock. The purple aura was rising from one of them. Demon King Three Knights immediately shouted angrily, "Sneaky bastards! Let's see where you can run to." He shot out with a swoosh. Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu had just poked their heads out when they immediately realized that the blinding red light was shining on their bodies. Hearing the other parties shout, Yu Qianqiu immediately exclaimed, "Damn it! We've been discovered by Demon King Three Knights. Dodge!" Before he finished speaking, the two of them felt a huge pressure coming towards them. The two of them were so scared that they hurriedly disappeared. Almost at the same time, the big rock they were hiding on was smashed into powder by a strong force. If they were a little bit slower, they would have lost their lives. A huge palm print was embedded in the ground. Demon King Three Knights, who was floating in the air, was stunned. Before his palm could hit the two of them, he realized that the other party had disappeared right under his nose. He quickly scanned the surroundings but couldn't even find a trace of where the other party had gone. He couldn't help but be shocked. There was only one explanation for this. That Bai Changchun's cultivation far surpassed his. Chapter 1160. After Yu Qianqiu escaped, the thunder that filled the sky also disappeared in an instant. A few strands of lightning flashed a few times in the dark clouds before disappearing. The dark clouds began to slowly dissipate, and the bright and beautiful sunlight shone down from the cracks in the clouds. It was a magnificent sight. The demon realm army floated in the sky, still in shock. They were all struck black by the lightning and looked at the dissipating dark clouds. Only a few experts seemed to be fine. Nearly half of the 900,000-strong demon realm army was lost. Among the charred corpses on the ground, some were moaning for help. They were all heavily injured but had not been killed by the lightning. Eunuch Li quickly flashed to Demon King Three Knights' side and looked at the huge palm print embedded in the ground. Demon King Three Knights looked at him and shook his head slightly. There were two people who were able to easily leave under my eyes, and I couldn't even detect their traces. I'm afraid their cultivation is higher than mine. I don't know which one of them is Bai Changchun. Although he had seen Yu Qianqiu in the obsidian light mirror, Yu Qianqiu was dressed as Niu Yud. Otherwise, he would have recognized Yu Qianqiu at a glance. As for Nongzhu, he had never seen her before. But with two such powerful people appearing at the same time, Demon King Three Knights was already considering whether or not to adjust his plan to unify the three realms. But what he couldn't understand was why two people with such power would flee when they saw him. Yan Juexing, Bai Qi, and Jin Tai were quickly called over by the Three Knights Demon Lord for questioning. The Three Knights Demon Lord described the appearance of the two people and asked the three who the two people who had escaped were. And who was Bai Changchun? Bai Qi and Jintai looked at each other, puzzled. After thinking for a while, Bai Qi said respectfully, Bai Changchun likes to wear green robes and looks like a skinny old man. He seems different from the two people Demon King saw. Jintai pondered and said, could they be from the Netherworld Divine Office? Otherwise, why would two unfamiliar experts suddenly appear? Demon King Three Knights glanced at the two coldly and snorted. Who was the one who swore to me that it was Bai Changchun? The two of them were speechless and trembled with fear, not daring to speak. On the side, Yan Zhuixing suddenly exclaimed softly, could it be the two of them? Everyone turned to look at him. Yan Zhuixing immediately came to his senses and explained to the Demon King Three Knights, the two people that the Demon King described. The ordinary-looking one looked like Yu Qianqiu, while the other one looked so handsome that he looked like Nongzhu, whom I've seen before. Furthermore, the two of them were originally from the same nest, so it's not strange for them to be together. Their appearance matches Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu, but their cultivation is definitely not that high. Maybe I guessed wrong. If that's the case, then one of them really does look like Yu Qianqiu. Qintai's voice immediately became softer as he looked at Demon King Three Knights. Afraid that he would say too much, he decided not to continue. However, Demon King Three Knights' gaze turned to the group of subordinates that had been struck by lightning, and a strange feeling suddenly arose in his heart. He had the thought that a bad start might not be a good omen. Then, he quickly dispelled the haze in his heart and coldly snorted, no matter who the two of them are, they won't amount to anything if they sneak around and don't dare to show themselves. Order the army to continue chasing after them. Inside the Divine Ruin Realm base, as soon as the figures of Yu Qianqiu and Nongzhu appeared, they simultaneously spat out a mouthful of blood. All the bones in their bodies seemed to have fallen apart as they laid on the ground. Their internal organs were still surging, and their eardrums were still buzzing. Although the two of them were lucky enough to escape, they were still injured by the Demon King Three Knights' palm strike that was as fast as lightning. Although it did not hit them directly, the immense pressure from the first strike was enough to make the two of them suffer greatly. Even though she was injured, Nongzhu still seemed to be very happy as she patted her chest and exclaimed, that scared me to death, that scared me to death. That was close, that was close. I was almost killed by Demon King Three Knights' palm strike. Wah! She spat out another mouthful of blood and quickly shut up. Yu Qianqiu also wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. If they were just a little bit late, they would have been just a little bit away. Their lives would have been completely over. Demon King Three Knights was indeed not someone that people of their level of cultivation could casually take advantage of. This was also because they had discovered it early. If Demon King Three Knights had launched a sneak attack, even with the Golden Bead's teleportation function, the two of them would not even have had the chance to escape. The two of them once again lay on the ground and spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. Their bodies were sore and weak, and it was difficult for them to even get up. They simply lay on the ground and whimpered, their faces as white as a sheet of white paper. When a subordinate who was passing by saw the two of them, he was shocked and ran over to ask about their well-being. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand to indicate that he was fine. His stomach was churning and he really did not want to talk anymore. The subordinate hurriedly ran to report. Not long later, Furong's group of women, Wei Chuanxiu, and the rest of the men all ran over. When they saw the two of them half dead and spat out a pool of blood on the ground, they were all shocked. They hurriedly helped the two of them up and asked what had happened. Nongzhu really did not have the strength to speak. Yu Qianqiu opened his bloody mouth and laughed bitterly, damn it. This is too scary. Demon King Three Knights personally took care of them. To be able to escape is already very lucky. Wah! Spitting out another mouthful of blood, he weakly waved his hand and said, don't talk for now. Let me rest first. I really don't have any strength left. Demon King Three Knights. Everyone exclaimed. Wei Chuanxiu let out a cold breath and said, the demon realm has really opened? Demon King Three Knights has already arrived in the Three Realms? A group of people hurriedly carried the two patients into a room in the base. A few of the women had already cried, especially Zi. She lay on Nongju's body with tears streaming down her face and kept shouting, "Master, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. Don't you die." Nongju really wanted to say that she wouldn't die. However, once she relaxed, she became dizzy and couldn't say a word. The two men who were lying on the bed suddenly fainted one after the other, scaring the women even more. Deming Luan quickly examined the two's injuries. After discovering that the problem was not serious, he heaved a sigh of relief and waved his hand at everyone. "It's nothing serious. It's just that their bodies were under a huge pressure. Their limbs and bones were damaged and their internal organs were slightly displaced. To mortals, this is a fatal injury. However, with their cultivation, it's nothing serious. After all, they have forged their immortal bodies, so they can recover very quickly. Furthermore, they received a huge shock. After the extreme fear, they suddenly relaxed, so they fainted. It's really not a big problem." That means they fainted from fear? This brat isn't afraid of anything, but he fainted from fear? What exactly happened? Wei Chuanxiu twisted the mouse-like mustache on his mouth and looked at the two of them in confusion. Why would someone at the level of Demon King 3 Knights personally attack them? Isn't this too degrading? Furthermore, why didn't they run when they saw Demon King 3 Knights? Why did they wait for him to come and take care of them? What did these two lunatics do to make Demon King 3 Knights personally attack them? The women were still a little worried. After they personally checked on Yu Qianqiu's injuries, they discovered that it was really as Deming Luan said. Only then did they relax. However, they all stayed in the room and didn't leave a single step. Several hours later, Yu Qianqiu, who was lying on the bed, opened his eyes again. Half a day later, he jumped out of bed energetically. He looked at Nongju, who was lying on the bed. She was still unconscious. The group of people found it hard to believe. Deming Luan grabbed him and checked again. He was instantly flabbergasted. "Brat, you're really tough. You recovered so quickly." This time, it wasn't just the women. Even Wei Chuanxiu pulled Yu Qianqiu to check on him. After discovering that he was really fine, they all looked at him like he was a monster. Yu Qianqiu knew that it was the effect of the golden bead, but he couldn't say it out loud. He could only laugh at the crowd. "For a man like me who has been through hardships for a long time, I've suffered countless small injuries like this. Everything will be fine once you get used to it, hee hee." Deming Luan and the others surrounded him and asked him what had happened. Yu Qianqiu sighed slightly and told them about the immortal and underworld demon killing alliances, 300 million people attacking the demon world's army, and how Demon King 3 Knights personally made a move. Hearing that when Demon King 3 Knights made a move, almost 200 million of the immortal and underworld's 300 million people died, even though everyone was mentally prepared, their expressions still changed. They couldn't imagine how terrifying it was for one person to kill 200 million people in one go. "I didn't expect Demon King 3 Knights to be so powerful. Who in the 3 realms can stop him?" Deming Luan sighed. Yu Qianqiu was silently recalling that tragic scene in his mind. When he heard this, his eyes suddenly flickered as if he had thought of something. He pulled Wei Chuanxiu to a secluded room. Once they entered the room, Wei Chuanxiu frowned and asked, "What are you trying to do sneakily?" "I was thinking about something." Yu Qianqiu asked thoughtfully. Even though Tai Shu Zheng, the ancestor of all demons, is slightly inferior to the demon god, he was someone who was as famous as the demon god back then. Demon King 3 Knights is the descendant of the demon god, so the demonic technique he cultivates naturally comes from the demon god. And the 10,000 Demon Hearts Sutra that Bai Suzhen cultivates comes from Tai Shu Zheng. Do you think that Bai Suzhen has any hope of defeating Demon King 3 Knights in the future? About this, Wei Chuanxiu pondered and said, "Even though Tai Shu Zheng is slightly inferior to the demon god, it's not certain if the descendants of the two are the same. The key is that those who reach first come first. Even though Bai Suzhen's cultivation is improving rapidly, she is only at the intermediate stage of the upper immortal. It's not realistic for her to defeat that old Demon King 3 Knights." Hearing that Bai Suzhen had advanced from the tribulation stage to the intermediate stage of the upper immortal in just a few years and that her cultivation was slightly higher than his, Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but marvel at the extraordinary power of the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra. He then looked at Wei Chuanxiu and asked suspiciously, "Can't you also cultivate the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra? You are now an immortal emperor expert. Once you cultivate the 10,000 Demon Heart Sutra, wouldn't your cultivation advance by leaps and bounds? Wouldn't you have a higher chance of defeating Demon King 3 Knights? I do want to cultivate it, but the key is that my inner core has yet to fully condense. It's not the time for me to cultivate it." Wei Chuanxiu stroked his mouse-like mustache and sighed. He suddenly paused and said, "Bai Suzhen's cultivation progress is no longer as fast as before. Instead, it's getting slower. I think she's about to reach a bottleneck. But if we can find the blue sea essence to cleanse Bai Suzhen's meridians and marrow, her cultivation might be able to surpass Demon King 3 Knights quickly." Chapter 1161. What is the blue sea essence? Why haven't I heard of it before? Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, "Could it be related to the blue sea death trap in the blue sea?" Wei Chuanxiu nodded solemnly, "That's right. The blue sea essence comes from the blue sea death trap. If you want to find the blue sea essence, you have to go to the blue sea death trap in the blue sea death trap." Yu Qianqiu scratched his head, "Can you explain it more clearly? What is this blue sea essence? Why is it related to Bai Suzhen's myriad Demon Heart Sutra?" "It's a long story." Wei Chuanxiu clasped his hands behind his back and put on a nostalgic expression. However, when paired with his wretched appearance, it felt a little out of place. He paced slowly with his hands behind his back and said, "Ordinary people only know that the blue sea of death formed in the vast sea because a huge blue crystal fell from the sky. From then on, the sea turned into a magnificent and dazzling blue color. From time to time, all kinds of snow blue auroras would shoot out from the bottom of the sea. Every time a cultivator who didn't know what was going on flew over the sky, they would be killed by the auroras that suddenly shot out. As time passed, no one dared to trespass there, so it was called the Blue Sea of Death. I've heard of all this. I know that the best material for refining weapons in the 3 realms is the blue sea gold essence produced there. However, it's very difficult to obtain and extremely rare. When someone is lucky enough to come across a small piece of blue sea gold essence that spits out from the sea, they'll become extremely rich. Therefore, many people often go there to try their luck." Yu Qianqiu walked to a chair by the wall and sat down. He crossed his legs and asked, "Don't beat around the bush. Just tell me what happened so that I can find it easier." Wei Chuanqiu stopped and revealed a secretive look on his face as he said, "Most people only know this much, but Demon God Yi and Tai Shujing found the blue sea essence at the bottom of the blue sea death trap. This is something that outsiders don't know." Of course, the name blue sea essence was also given by the 2 of them. In the records of the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra, I read that it was precisely because the 2 of them were unintentionally cleansed by the blue sea essence that they became the demon god and the myriad demon ancestor in the future. Hearing this, Yu Qianqiu couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up with a whoosh and said in shock, "Is the blue sea essence really that miraculous? Why didn't you tell me earlier that there was such a good thing?" There were still some words in his heart that he didn't say out loud. "Who knows, I might already be able to fight against the 3 knights one-on-one. So what if I told you earlier?" Wei Chuanxiu had a look of disdain on her face. "Are you sure you have the ability to dive to the bottom of the blue sea death trap and search for the essence of the blue sea? Speaking of which, when I saw the records of the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra in the past, I was also very tempted and went there. Let alone diving into the seabed, I almost lost my life a few times when I got close to the sea. If you have the confidence, it's not too late to know now. But don't blame me if you lose your life." Yu Qianqiu chuckled disapprovingly and said, "You're underestimating me. On land, I might not be as fast as those experts, but in the water, even the fishes in the sea can't react as fast as I do. The blue sea death trap might be dangerous to others, but to me, it's nothing at all." "That's right. What does the blue sea essence look like? Don't let me miss it even if I find it. Then I'll have to wait and see." Wei Chuanxiu sneered and said, "According to the records of the Myriad Demon Heart Sutra, The blue sea essence is a glowing blue rainbow liquid that flows from the sleeping blue crystal at the bottom of the sea. It's very easy to identify. You'll be able to recognize it once you see it. Good. I'll keep this matter in mind. As long as there's such a treasure, I'll definitely have a way to get it. Yu Qianqiu rubbed his hands excitedly. After chatting with Wei Chuanxiu for a while, he went outside the base to find Zhang Peng and told him some things, asking him to hurry up with the training of those people. But he was worried about the situation outside and was in a hurry to go out to gather information. When he was about to leave, he suddenly thought of something and stopped Zhang Peng. He whispered to Zhang Peng with a smile, "Mr. Nongzhu was injured because of me. I'm very sorry. I heard that he liked a woman before, so I want to give him a surprise. So I want to ask the woman he likes to serve him while he's unconscious." Zhang Peng saw the evil smile on his face and vaguely felt that it was not what he said. He asked weakly, "Master, which woman do you want to serve Mr. Nongzhu?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "The leader of the Moon Clan, Qianghua Fairy." That's not a good idea. Zhang Peng hesitated and said, "That woman used to be the leader of a clan. Now that she hasn't been trained for long, I'm afraid that she won't be able to put down her pride to serve others. I'm afraid that she won't be willing. If she doesn't agree, do I have to force her?" "Don't force her. Don't tell her that you're going to serve others. Just tell her that you need her." Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and said happily, "With Mr. Nongzhu's looks, is there a man more handsome than him in the world? I promise that as long as Qianghua Fairy sees him, she will definitely take the initiative to stay. But remember, when you bring Qianghua Fairy, Miss C.E., Mr. Nongzhu's disciple, must be present. Do you understand?" To be honest, the more Zhang Peng listened, the more confused he became. He really didn't understand what Su Ping meant, but he still nodded and said, "I understand. There's one more thing I want to ask. What do you think we should do?" Yu Qianqiu frowned and thought of the horrible scene when the Demon King of 3 Nights attacked again. He hesitated and said, "There's something you should know. The 4 clans are related to your Grandmaster, Bai Changchun, and your Masteress, Wu Lixue, is from the Wu clan. If something happens to them when they go out to fight, I won't be able to explain it to your Grandmaster and Masteress. But I don't want to be biased and affect the morale of the army. What do you think we should do?" Zhang Peng was speechless. He had heard about the relationship between these people. With Master's power, he could solve it easily. Master just wanted to be a good person and not a bad person because of his family. What did he mean by, "What do you think we should do"? He just wanted Zhang Peng to be the scapegoat if anything happened. That disciple has also considered this before. I want to transfer the 4 great clans for other purposes, but there are tens of thousands of people in the 4 great clans. Taking all of them out would indeed shake the morale of the army and cause others to have wild thoughts. Zhang Peng coughed awkwardly and said, "This is what I think. The 4 clans, starting from the heads of the 4 clans, can only transfer 10 direct relatives within 3 generations for other purposes. If there are less than 10 direct relatives within 3 generations, we can take less. If there are more than 10, we can only take 10 at most. The others should not be moved. What do you think, Master?" Yu Qianqiu secretly pondered. Wu Sihai and Wu Lishue's parents and brother were all protected. If anything happened, Wu Lixue would not blame him. At the same time, this would preserve the bloodline of the 4 clans. Master Bai Changchun would be easier to talk to. As for the other influential members of the 4 clans, their ancestors would not mistreat them. Yu Qianqiu looked Zhang Peng up and down and realized that he had not misjudged Zhang Peng. Zhang Peng was quite good at handling matters. He coughed seriously and said seriously, "Since the army has been handed over to you, I will not interfere with your management. Everything is for the sake of the big picture. How to allocate manpower is your business. I believe that you will handle everything well. I will not interfere with any of your decisions." "Yes. I will handle it now." Zhang Peng cupped his hands and retreated. As he walked out, his expression twitched. He thought to himself, "Is there a need to talk like an official to me? Why don't you just tell me directly? You just don't want to take responsibility and push it to me if anything happens. You can just say it clearly and push it to me if anything happens. Why would I have any opinion? What do you mean by deploying manpower is my business? If you don't say it, do you think I need to deploy these people? Before he left, Yu Qianqiu was entangled by some trivial matters again. He had to spend another 2 days to deal with them. Suddenly, he heard Nongzhu's angry voice echoing in the underground base, Yu Qianqiu. You son of a bitch, you beast, get out here right now. Yu Qianqiu suddenly became alert. He knew that the matter had been exposed. He was so busy that he almost forgot about it and hurriedly slipped away. When he returned to the immortal world, he found that the whole immortal world was in a mess. He casually grabbed a person who was fleeing in panic and asked him. It was either this person who said that a certain sect had been destroyed or that a certain sect had been wiped out. In short, the army of the devil world had started a bloodbath in the immortal world. As for the overall situation of the army of the devil world in the immortal world, it was useless to ask these small characters who were fleeing everywhere. He could only find out from the people of diabolism. He teleported to the valley outside the illusionary immortal city and was flying stealthily along the valley, trying to catch a soldier of diabolism to inquire about the news. Unexpectedly, after flying over a few mountains, he heard the sound of fierce fighting coming from the valley ahead. He immediately approached it quietly. He hid behind a tree in the valley and observed quietly. He saw more than a dozen corpses lying in the canyon, both male and female. 6 bare-chested men with broadswords were surrounding a seemingly crazy man and beating him non-stop. On the side, there were 3 bare-chested men with broadswords holding a woman hostage. The 3 of them were touching the woman's body, and from time to time, they would tear off a piece of clothing and laugh wildly. The woman's snow-white skin was exposed. Although there were still pieces of clothing hanging on her upper body, she was almost naked, and her plump breasts were exposed. Naturally, the 3 of them would not let go of the opportunity to ravage her. The woman fell into the hands of the 3 people and silently cried. She could not resist at all. Obviously, she was restrained. Meanwhile, the surrounded man roared and charged forward, looking like he wanted to save the woman. However, he could not break through the provocative obstruction of the 6 people. The 6 people dealt with the man easily, but deliberately did not kill him. Each of them was having fun, as if they wanted the man to see them humiliate the woman. After seeing the appearance of the man and woman who were humiliated, Yu Qianqiu was shocked. This man and woman were not strangers, they were Long Xiaojiu and Guang Nianzu, who had come to represent Hidden Dragon Mountain Manor to congratulate the opening of the world commerce. Long Xiaojiu could be considered to have some friendly relations with him. Guang Nianzu did not have any friendly relations with him, but he had taken a bath with him in the basement of the world commerce. He did not know how he ended up here. And he had seen the outfits of those few burly men with broadswords before. They seemed to be the subordinates of that diabolism expert called Li Tian. The people that Li Tian had brought had already been killed by the immortal underworld evil killing alliance. These people might have rushed over from the diabolism world. Chapter 1162. Now that things had developed to this stage, there was no doubt that the illusory immortal city was already under the control of the demon domain. Naturally, there were experts guarding the place. This place was not very far from the illusory immortal city. Yu Qianqiu's plan was to capture a few demonic path pawns to interrogate, but there were 9 people in front of him, and none of them were cultivators that he could see through. He really didn't know what would happen if he made a move. However, if he were to watch Long Xiaojiu get raped by this group of people, he would feel bad for his cruel and unscrupulous stomach. Yu Qianqiu cursed under his breath when he saw someone reaching out to pull Long Xiaojiu's pants. He gritted his teeth and threw caution to the wind. With a wave of his hands, thousands of purple flame-flying swords flew toward the canyon. In an instant, the purple light was dazzling, like a meteor shower bombarding the canyon. A series of rumbling sounds and a few screams could be heard, but there were still 3 figures that darted out quickly, dodging the sword rain, and dashed towards Yu Qianqiu with extreme speed. Yu Qianqiu jumped out from the call, and slammed his palms towards the three people that were rushing over, and shouted, "Absorbing Star's great technique." The two people on the left and right were caught unprepared, and directly exploded into two clouds of white mist, turning as thin as firewood as they fell down. The one in the middle, however, had a high cultivation, and blocked the locking of the Absorbing Star's great technique with his chi. His cultivation was clearly much higher than Yu Qianqiu's, and he slashed at Yu Qianqiu with his saber. Yu Qianqiu had already made up his mind, and didn't plan to hold back. He held his breath and attacked with all his strength. He casually swung out a huge golden sword, raised both hands, and slashed at the opponent head-on. Clang! The saber aura collapsed, the huge saber was cut in half, and the golden light directly split the opponent into two. Blood spurted out, and the split body fell to the ground. The two eyes on the head were filled with disbelief. When the saber aura clashed with the opponent, he knew that his cultivation was higher than the opponent's. However, the giant golden sword in his opponent's hand broke through the saber aura effortlessly, then cut the saber in half. Finally, it broke through the defense on his body and killed him in one fell swoop. There was not even a slight pause. Until his death, his two eyes were fixed on the huge golden sword in Yu Qianqiu's hand. He did not know what kind of sword could be so terrifyingly sharp. After Yu Qianqiu used the divine sword to kill his opponent, he immediately changed his target. Without any pause, he chased after the two people who flew away. After being hit by his Absorbing Star's great technique, their flying speed was almost the same as that of a bird. How could they escape? Yu Qianqiu quickly chased after them. He swung his giant sword and swatted one of them down as if he was swatting a fly. After the two of them fell to the ground, he restrained them. He put away his divine sword and quickly carried them back into the canyon. In the canyon, thousands of purple flying swords were stabbed into the ground. Guang Nianzhu had already removed the restriction on Long Xiaojiu's body. He took out some clothes to cover her exposed body. The two of them hugged each other and cried bitterly. Yu Qianqiu didn't even look at them. He threw the two corpses on the ground and put away the 1,000 purple flame flying swords. He kept one in his hand and quickly flashed around. He chopped off the heads of the people on the ground who weren't dead yet and finished them off. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief. It was too risky just now. If there was someone with a higher cultivation, it would be troublesome. It would be impossible to save these two fellas and he would have to run away. Fortunately, these people were careless and allowed him to succeed in his sneak attack. In fact, from the moment he made his move until now, it only took him a few sips of tea. It seemed like it was settled smoothly, but it was a real risk. I say, the two of you should leave this place quickly. Once you are discovered by the people of the demonic Tao, you won't be able to leave even if you want to. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them and shook his head. The two of them who were hugging each other and crying finally separated. Long Xiaojiu put on her clothes and the two of them came over to thank him for saving her life. Guang Nianzhu then picked up a sword and wanted to kill the two people who were still alive to take revenge. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and stopped him. You can't kill these two people. Why? Guang Nianzhu seemed to have gone mad as he roared, they are all dead. All the disciples of my hidden dragon manor were killed by them. They chased us all the way here, why can't I kill these two? The demonic Tao has returned to the three realms. Now that the world is in chaos, your hidden dragon manor is not the only sect that has been massacred. Yu Qianqiu blocked in front of him and sighed, I purposely left these two people alive. I'm keeping them alive to deal with the demonic Tao. You guys better leave quickly. If you delay any longer, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave. Hearing his words, Guang Nianzhu didn't continue to be stubborn. Instead, he wiped away his sad tears and nodded with Long Xiaojiu. Both of them flashed to the center of the canyon and brandished their swords, creating a few large holes in the ground. Yu Qianqiu frowned and flashed over, shouting in a deep voice, Stop! What are you guys trying to do? Don't tell me you think the commotion isn't big enough and want to attract the people of the demonic Tao? Yu Qianqiu. Long Xiaojiu looked at him with tears streaming down her face, choking with sobs. We can't just watch the corpses of the hidden Dragon Manor's disciples lie in the wilderness. If it wasn't for them risking their lives to protect us, the two of us would already be. Speaking up to here, she was already choking with sobs. Maybe it was because she recalled the scene of her being humiliated, she cried even harder. All right. It wasn't easy for me to save the two of you. I don't want to see the two of you take any more risks. Quickly escape. Leave the matters here to me. Yu Qianqiu forcefully waved his hand at the two of them, indicating for them to leave quickly. Then, he waved his arms in all directions. The soil in the canyon rumbled and quickly swallowed all the corpses into the ground. In an instant, dust returned to dust, soil returned to soil. The man and woman both knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the empty canyon. After kowtowing, they hugged each other and cried bitterly. Yu Qianqiu felt a toothache. What now? Why aren't you leaving? When the experts of the demonic Tao come, I won't have the ability to save the two of you. Where can we escape to? Now that the demonic Tao is wreaking havoc in the three realms, won't we fall into their hands sooner or later? We might as well fight with them and kill as many as we can. Guang Mianzu choked with sobs. Fight? If you can't even deal with these few people, what do you have to fight with? Yu Qianqiu walked over and grabbed Guang Mianzu, who was kneeling on the ground and crying bitterly. Yu Qianqiu grabbed Guang Mianzu by his hair and pointed a finger at Long Xiaojiu. Look closely. Look clearly. Do you see her? This woman was humiliated right in front of your eyes, but you couldn't do anything. Do you really want to see her being defiled? If you're still a man, don't try to be brave. If you can't even protect the woman you love, so what if you kill Demon King 3 nights? So what if everyone praises you as the #1 expert of the 3 realms? Yu Qianqiu immediately let go of Chu Feng's hair, held his shoulder, and tried to persuade him in a warm and sincere voice. Listen to me, protect yourself well, protect your beloved woman well. Even if it is those disciples of the hidden Dragon Manor who have already died, I still want to leave behind a trace of their torch. I also want you to live well, so that you can take revenge for them in the future. Listen well. It's understandable that Long Xiaojiu lost her composure, she's a woman, but at this critical moment, you as a man have to bear the burden bravely and keep a clear head. Quickly leave this place and bring Long Xiaojiu to Ancient Forest. There are experts guarding that place. I reckon that the demonic Tao won't dare to act recklessly in Ancient Forest. He then grabbed Long Xiaojiu and pushed the two of them, saying, Go. Quickly go. We can't stay here for long. Hearing that there was still a way out, the two of them finally dispelled their thoughts of suicide. They choked with sobs and bowed to Yu Qianqiu, then quickly left. Seeing the two of them disappear at the other end of the valley, Yu Qianqiu abandoned all distracting thoughts and flashed to the two corpses. His palm spewed out 2 balls of white mist, immediately restoring the 2 corpses to their original state. However, they were lying on the ground, unable to move. They looked at him with fear in their eyes, and one of them said angrily, If you don't want to die, quickly let us go. Otherwise, if you fall into the hands of the demonic Tao, you'll... Ah! Before he could finish, there was a scream. Yu Qianqiu had already taken out a purple flame-flying sword and chopped off one of his feet without hesitation. He raised the sword and sneered, saying, You must be out of your mind. Now, I'm not the one falling into your hands, but you two falling into my hands. How dare you threaten me? Listen up, you have no room to bargain. You will answer whatever I ask. Whoever is slow, wrong, or unable to answer, I will chop them. I will chop them up piece by piece. Let's see how many pieces I can chop. The sword in his hand moved from their legs to their necks. The two of them did not doubt his determination at all. They nodded with pale faces. That's more like it. Yu Qianqiu stood in the middle of the two, looked left and right, waved the sword in his hand and asked, Let me ask you too, what's my name? The two of them were stunned at the same time. They never dreamed that he would ask such a question. For a moment, they thought they heard wrong. However, the sword in Yu Qianqiu's hand reacted very quickly. With a slash to the left and right, he immediately chopped off one of their feet. Ah, ah, two screams sounded. The one who had both his feet chopped off trembled in pain and said, "You're purposely making things difficult for us. You won't let us go." Nonsense. Am I such a despicable person? That woman who was molested by you two clearly shouted out my name, but you two pretended not to know. Do you really think I'm a fool? Yu Qianqiu stood on the ground with both hands on the sword. He looked left and right and continued, "Let me add one more rule. If anyone dares to scream again, I will chop them. Let me ask you too, what's the name of your Devil Palace's Vice Palace Lord?" "Yan Zhuixing." The two of them said at the same time without hesitation. Correct answer. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. This time, there was indeed no more random slashes. This gave the two of them a glimmer of hope for survival. He asked again, "Where's Yan Zhuixing now?" The two of them immediately scrambled to answer, afraid that the other party would beat them to it. However, the results were more or less the same. The gist of it was that Yan Zhuixing had an enemy called Yu Qianqiu. The Devil World's army had not been able to find this person. Yan Zhuixing suspected that Yu Qianqiu had returned to the human world. Thus, the three Knights Demon Lord selected 4 great demon kings from the army that attacked the Netherworld to lead an army to protect Yan Zhuixing and head to the Netherworld. They wanted to find Yu Qianqiu and the human world through the Netherworld passage to take revenge. Chapter 1163. After the two of them finished answering, they suddenly looked at each other as they lay on the ground. They seemed to have thought of something. It seemed that the woman from before had called this person Yu Qianqiu. Then wasn't this person the enemy that the Vice Palace Master was looking for everywhere? The two looked at each other and immediately knew that they had guessed correctly. They couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu and said, "You're Yu Qianqiu?" It should be known that the Devil Palace would reward anyone who could find Yu Qianqiu or inquire about Yu Qianqiu. Nonsense. Don't you all know that Yan Zhuixing has an enemy called Yu Qianqiu? If I'm not Yu Qianqiu, why would I ask about Yan Zhuixing's whereabouts? Yu Qianqiu said slowly. Then, he waved the sword in his hand and asked the two a lot of information about the Devil Dao and the Devil Palace. Unfortunately, the two's status in the Devil World was too low. They couldn't get any in-depth information. Most of the information they got was hearsay and not necessarily accurate. However, Yu Qianqiu still believed that Yan Zhuixing would go to the human world to find him. First, all the conditions were met. Yan Zhuixing definitely wanted to find him for revenge. Second, the two also participated in the search for him. They also heard about the movements of the various armies, so it couldn't be fake. Seeing that he had nothing else to ask, the two looked at him nervously. One of them asked weakly, "Can you let us go now?" They asked without any confidence. Putting themselves in Yu Qianqiu's shoes, they felt that he wouldn't let them go easily. However, they still held on to a glimmer of hope, just like that life-saving straw. As expected, Yu Qianqiu glared at them and pointed his sword at them. He said sternly, "You are from the Devil Dao, and I am from the Righteous Dao. You Devil Dao have harmed the 3 realms and harmed the innocent. Everyone in the Righteous Dao has the right to punish you. Since ancient times, the righteous and evil have been irreconcilable. Today, I will eliminate the evil for the 3 realms and take revenge for those who died in vain in the 3 realms. The heavens can bear witness to this ambition." His words were spoken with a strong sense of righteousness. The two of them knew that they had no hope of surviving and immediately cursed. In the end, they only managed to spit out a few words before their heads were chopped off by Yu Qianqiu. Bah! Yu Qianqiu spat out a mouthful of saliva and sheathed the sword in his hand resentfully. That righteous and awe-inspiring appearance was probably the same as killing Demon King 3 Knights. However, from what he heard just now, it was said that Demon King 3 Knights was currently guarding the illusory immortal city. It was impossible for him to go and eliminate the evil of the 3 realms, so he could only fantasize about these 2 demonic pawns. Currently, the 3 million Devil Dao army was cleaning up the immortal world, while the 10 million Devil Dao army was already slaughtering their way into the netherworld. Yu Qianqiu wasn't very worried about these two things. The key was that he couldn't do anything about it now. However, Yan Zhuixing was bringing a large group of people to the human realm through the netherworld passage, so he couldn't help but be anxious. Forget about the good situation that he had painstakingly created, he still had his loved ones in the human realm. Bastard! You are forcing me to activate the Ghost Demon Immortal Extermination Formation. Yu Qianqiu said angrily and disappeared into the canyon. In front of the 9th netherworld cave in the Yin Wind Valley of the Demon Domain, Yu Qianqiu silently stood on the cliff and stared at the entrance of the 9th netherworld cave for a while. There was nothing abnormal about the 9th netherworld cave, so it was obvious that Yan Zhuixing and the others hadn't arrived so quickly. Yu Ji, who had handed over the authority in her hands, stood quietly behind him and looked at Yu Qianqiu with some uneasiness. She didn't know where the punishment envoy was taking her to. She even thought that the punishment envoy might have fallen for her beauty and would do something to her. If that really happened, what could she do? Yu Qianqiu turned around and stared at her for a while, then said quietly, "Close your eyes." Could it be that he couldn't wait? It had to be here. Yu Ji's delicate body trembled, and her heart became more and more uneasy. However, she still bit her lips and closed her eyes. When she felt the surrounding terrain change again and again, she heard Yu Qianqiu say, "Open your eyes." Yu Ji gently opened her eyes, and in front of her was a boundless lake. She was standing on an island in the lake, and the long-forgotten sunshine was shining brightly on her body. She couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu in astonishment and said, "Shantian Island?" Yu Qianqiu nodded. Miss Mu had already hurried over to greet him. Yu Qianqiu looked around, and his eyes fell on the blooming magnolia tree on the island. He said in a heavy tone, "Miss Mu, take your real body with you. I'm going to send you two out of the demon domain." Miss Mu was stunned. She looked at Yu Ji, who was also a little confused. She wanted to say something, but she hesitated for a while. In the end, she didn't ask what she wanted to ask. She responded with a "yes" and quickly left. The two women were quickly sent to the base in the Divine Ruin Realm by him. He left the specific arrangements to Zhangpeng, and he quickly returned to Shantian Island. He slowly walked around the entire island a few times. The island was sunny, and the sky was blue. However, his heart was very heavy. The green grass and wildflowers passed by his feet, and he looked at every house and tree on the island again and again. After so many tortures, the demon domain had finally been passed down to him. He subconsciously did not want it to be destroyed in his hands, but he felt that the existence of such a freak like the demon domain in the human world made him very uncomfortable. When he passed by Utopia a few times, he had tried to contact Bai Changchun, wanting Bai Changchun to make this decision. It would be better if Bai Changchun had the ability to stop Yan Zhuixing from leading the Devil World's army to cause trouble in the human world. In short, he did not want to bear the crime of destroying important cultural relics. However, he could not find any traces of Bai Changchun at all. Obviously, he had hidden in the barrier of heavens to cultivate again. Otherwise, he would at least be able to contact the whereabouts of the silver balls that he had given Bai Changchun. He wanted to look for Bai Changchun in the barrier of heavens, but unfortunately, he could not enter. The 1-year agreement with Xinyu was almost up, but there was still some time left. Distant water could not put out a nearby fire. Moreover, he did not know if Xinyu would keep his promise to pick him up at the barrier of heavens. Unless it was the last resort, he really did not want to use the lives of Yan Zixia and her daughter to threaten Yan Zhuixing. After all, he had a relationship with Yan Zixia. Although he had severed their feelings, he really did not want to do something so heartless. He had planned to capture the mother and daughter when he had nowhere else to go. If the Fey Immortal Punishing Formation was useful, he would not touch the mother and daughter. However, his life and death involved the lives and futures of too many people, including many mortals in this pure land. He was already in a difficult position. "Old man, you've been so focused on improving your cultivation that you've thrown all the mess to me. Damn it. Once the Fey Immortal Punishing Formation is activated, the entire demon ghost domain will be destroyed. Don't blame me then. Yu Qianqiu muttered all the way to the side of the 1,000 Miles Lake. He sat down in a place with lush water plants. Looking at the sparkling lake, he took a deep breath. A mirror shining with white light slowly rose in front of him. The white light converged into the mirror, and the image in the quaint mirror quickly scanned the entire demon ghost domain. After checking the entire demon ghost domain, the image in the mirror was fixed on the scene of the 9 Netherworld cave. The sun in the sky gradually disappeared to the west. As night fell, stars appeared in the sky, surrounding a bright moon. When the sky turned white and the sun rose again, Yu Qianqiu was still sitting motionlessly by the 1,000 Miles Lake. The quaint heaven's eye mirror had been quietly floating in front of him, and the image in the mirror was still maintaining the scene of the 9 Netherworld cave. The sun rose and fell, and the starry sky rose and fell at night. Day and night alternated. More than 10 days later, the 9 Netherworld caves suddenly spewed out an ink-like chilly wind. The whistling wind stirred up the world as if it was going to destroy everything. A group of people in the chilly wind valley ran out in bewilderment. 2 streams of light shot out of the 9 Netherworld cave. Demon King Li Tian and Demon King He Qi both landed on the cliff and looked around vigilantly. Then, Yan Juexing and Demon King Shuang also flashed out of the cave and landed between them. Aoo! A thunderous roar overshadowed the whistling wind in the 9 Netherworld cave. Demon King Yinglong flew out of the cave and directly rose into the sky. There was a steady stream of people shooting out of the cave one after another. It took a few hours for all of them to come out. The army of 100,000 under Demon King Yinglong's command densely covered the entire sky of the Chilly Wind Valley. The scene was very shocking, and the 9 Netherworld cave finally returned to normal. A group of ghost cultivators in the Chilly Wind Valley looked at them in horror. Yan Juexing was very satisfied with their fear. He raised his hand and grabbed the air, directly pulling a ghost cultivator over. He grabbed the ghost cultivator's neck and asked indifferently, "Where is Yu Qianqiu?" I don't know," the ghost cultivator said in horror. As soon as he finished speaking, he was directly smashed into ashes by Yan Juexing's demonic palm. Yan Juexing waved his hand and pulled another ghost cultivator over to ask the same question. As a result, he got the same answer after killing a few more ghost cultivators. The other ghost cultivators wanted to escape, but Demon King Yinglong immediately ordered thousands of them to be killed, and drove all the ghost cultivators back. Yan Juexing immediately sneered and looked around at the ghost cultivators, saying, "I don't have the patience to wait anymore. I advise you to answer honestly. Otherwise, none of you will live." Sai Zhangfei walked out of the ghost cultivators with a twisted expression. He was the one who suffered the most. He had just taken over the Chilly Wind Valley not long ago, and who knew he would encounter such a thing? Unable to bear it any longer, he stood out and pointed at Yan Juexing, shouting angrily, "The punishment master came here more than 10 days ago, but he left after that. How could he tell us where he was going? Even if you kill us all, it's impossible for us to know where he is. He came here more than 10 days ago?" Yan Juexing raised his eyebrows. Looking at Demon King Li Tian beside him, he said with a faint smile, "The passageway to the underworld is blocked by so many formations. I was worried that he hadn't come back. I didn't expect him to show up here more than 10 days ago. It seems that the legend of Yu Qianqiu not being afraid of the soul-transforming smoke is true. He can really enter and exit the human world through the immortal ascension passageway. We made the right choice to come here. It seems that Vice Palace Master will soon be able to get his revenge." Demon King Li Tian smiled, but then he frowned and said, "But the human world is so big. If he hides, I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to find him. He's the punishment envoy of the demon realm. Since he's appeared here, he's most likely on Obedient Island. We've already sent people to guard the other end of the passageways, so it's unlikely that he'll be able to leave the human world. The army should surround Shuntian Island as soon as possible. If he's not here, I will find him even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground to vent my hatred." Yan Juexing gnashed his teeth and said sternly. Chapter 1164. We will do our best. Demon King Li Tian cupped his fists and said, but he was cursing in his heart. It's just Yu Qianqiu. We can deal with him at any time. The most important thing now is to pacify the three realms. It's a bit too much to mobilize 4 great demon kings for Yu Qianqiu. Yan Juixing didn't know that even if Yu Qianqiu was not in the human world, he, Yan Juixing, would also rush here in a hurry. He just happened to find a suitable excuse for revenge. Otherwise, it would be ignorant to say that he came to the human world to visit his relatives at this time. He estimated that once he appeared in the obsidian light mirror, his mother and sister might have already fallen into the hands of Yu Qianqiu. What worried him more was that he hoped that his wife and children were not exposed. He had to find out, otherwise he would not be able to eat and sleep in peace. Yan Juixing looked around at the crowd, waved his hand and pointed in the direction of Shantian Island, and said decisively, "Go ahead, you can see a big lake, and there is an island in the lake, which is Shantian Island. Yu Qianqiu may be there, and under the lake is the sealed passage of our demon realm. When we capture Yu Qianqiu, we can open the passage to the demon realm. I hope you can cooperate with us." They all cupped their fists to him, and then they all soared into the sky. Demon King Ying Tian waved his hand, and the army of 100,000 instantly turned into flying dragons waving their wings. Except that they were brown and black in color, they looked exactly the same as the mounts of ancestor Nan Ming. A group of flowing lights quickly shot towards Shantian Island. The protective formation of the chilly wind valley was easily broken through like a piece of paper. Sai Zhangfei and the other ghost generals were all horrified. They had all figured out the origin of the other party from their conversation. They were from the devil world. They could not imagine how the torturers had provoked the people of the devil world. Yu Qianqiu, who was sitting cross-legged by the 1,000 lake, had been staring at the movements of Yan Juixing and the others through the heaven's eye mirror. Seeing that the people of the demon realm had already rushed to Shantian Island, the heaven's eye mirror fell back into his hand. It's finally here. Yu Qianqiu sneered and stood up slowly. He put the heaven's eye mirror behind his back and stood there motionlessly. He looked at the distant horizon with a cold expression, waiting for Yan Juixing and the others to come. A group of flowing lights flew across the sky above the demon ghost domain, like a meteor shower falling from the sky, stirring up the dark clouds below. The majestic aura suppressed the surrounding demon ghosts, making them tremble in fear and not dare to move. They looked at the flowing lights flying past in terror, not knowing what was going on. For streaks of light pierced through the air, widening the distance between them and the army of 100,000 flying dragons. They were the first to break into the 1,000-mile lake, rushing towards the obedient island at lightning speed. Soon, they arrived in the sky above the small island in the lake. Li Tian, Shadow Cavalry, and Blood Shadow appeared. Yan Juixing jumped away from a huge flying dragon, which flapped its wings and stirred up a strong wind, stirring up the calm lake water into raging waves. The plants on the obedient island were uprooted and blown away, and the houses collapsed in an instant. Yu Qianqiu purposely changed into a long robe of the same style as Bai Changchun's. His blue robe fluttered in the fierce wind, but he gritted his teeth and didn't show any fear. He stood firmly by the lake like a nail. Even though the luxurious water grasses under his feet had already been blown away by the wind, he still calmly looked at the few people in the sky. He already had a faint aura of Bai Changchun, who looked down upon the world. The huge dragon's body flashed with a black light, and it turned back into the great demon King Ying Long. The 5 of them stared at Yu Qianqiu, sizing him up. Blood Shadow Great Demon King suddenly sneered and said, "I thought it was some big shot, but it turns out it's just an early upper immortal trash pretending to be mysterious. You want to scare us with a mere camouflage that can conceal your cultivation?" What he meant was, is such a small character worth the 4 great demon kings coming together to deal with? Then he looked back at Yan Juixing and said, "Vice Palace Lord, is this person that Yu Qianqiu?" Li Tian secretly glared at Blood Shadow, as if warning him not to embarrass Yan Juixing. The corner of Blood Shadow's mouth twitched, and he shut his mouth and did not say anything. Yan Juixing silently stared at the calm and fearless Yu Qianqiu for a while, then a teasing smile appeared on the corner of his mouth and he said, "Yu Qianqiu. You probably never dreamed that we would meet again so soon, right? And in this obedient island of the 1,000-mile lake. This is my territory. I will know as soon as you come out of the 9th netherworld cave." Yu Qianqiu stood there with his hands behind his back and said with a faint smile, "I have been waiting for you for a long time. I believe that a large group of winged lizards will be here soon." The few of them were stunned. Since he knew that a group of flying dragons was coming, it meant that he did know that they were coming. But why didn't he run away but wait for death here? Could it be that he had nothing to fear? Therefore, even Yan Juixing's eyes flickered. He had suffered losses in the hands of Yu Qianqiu several times. Whenever he saw Yu Qianqiu like this, his hair would stand on end. He was getting more and more confused about Yu Qianqiu. Who knew what this guy was going to do next? A large winged lizard? Great Demon King Yinglong suddenly roared like thunder, "Then I will let you know the power of a large lizard first." He opened his claws and was about to attack, but Yu Qianqiu didn't panic and shouted, "Yan Juixing's mother and sister are in my hands. If you dare to touch me, I guarantee that his mother and sister will be beheaded immediately. Can you bear this responsibility?" Great Demon King Yinglong's 5 claws stiffened. He slowly turned his head to look at Yan Juixing, as if to verify whether it was true. If it was true, he really couldn't make a move. If he killed the Vice Palace Lord's mother and sister, even if Yan Juixing didn't say anything, Demon King 3 Knights would probably make him suffer in order to help Yan Juixing vent his anger. The other 3 great demon kings also looked at Yan Juixing in surprise. Yan Juixing's expression gradually twisted. He pointed at Yu Qianqiu with his eyes wide open and said sternly, "Yu Qianqiu. You despicable person, what kind of ability do you have to threaten my family? Am I a despicable villain?" Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Everyone in the world can say that about me, but only you, Yan Juixing, don't have the qualifications. I can do this because I learned it from you, Yan Juixing. We are just the same. Do you really think that you can use my mother and sister to threaten me?" Yan Juixing clenched his fists and said, implying that he couldn't be threatened. Yu Qianqiu shrugged and said indifferently, "Since you have already captured them, it would be a waste not to threaten them. Just threaten them and see. It might be useful." Great Demon King Li Tian suddenly laughed and pointed at Yu Qianqiu. He shook his head and said with a smile, "You are really threatening the wrong person. If you were some peerless expert, we might not be able to do anything to you." Then, he smiled at Yan Juixing and said, "Vice Palace Lord is too worried. Can't we capture him alive? At that time, Vice Palace Lord will use Demon Eye Ecstasy on him and control him. Won't he release your mother and sister obediently? Even if Demon Eye Ecstasy can't control him, we can capture him and let Qing Tian plant a green demon seed in him. After he becomes a wood puppet, it will be easy to save them." The other great demon kings nodded in agreement. They looked at Yu Qianqiu like they were looking at a dead man. Yan Juixing laughed sinisterly when he heard that. Yu Qianqiu snorted disdainfully and said, "You want to capture me with just you? Previously, Demon King 3 Knights didn't do anything to me. I don't believe you guys are stronger than Demon King 3 Knights." The moment he said that, everyone's expression changed. They immediately thought of that thunderous scene. In the end, Demon King 3 Knights didn't manage to capture the person who did it. According to Demon King 3 Knights' description, they had suspected Yu Qianqiu. However, they felt that it was impossible. They didn't expect it to be this guy who did it. In that case, Demon King 3 Knights was guarding the celestial world and couldn't personally lead an army to attack the netherworld. Wasn't it a false alarm? Yan Juixing was stunned and said, "The person who did it in the celestial world was really you? Unfortunately, my cultivation is too low. I didn't use lightning to kill all of you." Yu Qianqiu looked at them and said mockingly, "But I believe the others won't be as lucky as you guys, right? I'm sure they'll be able to kill some of them." Seeing him admit it, everyone's expression changed again. That time, they didn't just kill some of them. There were hundreds of thousands of them. At this time, Demon King Ying Long's army of 100,000 wyverns arrived. They quickly surrounded the entire obedient island and waited for orders. Then all the more we can't let him go. Li Tian looked at Yan Juexing sinisterly, waiting for him to give the order. Yan Juexing's eyes flashed fiercely. Yu Qianqiu narrowed his eyes and made the first move without hesitation. The heaven's eye mirror on his back shot out a white light that shone on the obedient island. Then, it enveloped Yu Qianqiu completely. In an instant, the entire obedient island rumbled and shook violently. The few of them looked around vigilantly, only to see that the surface of the 1,000-mile lake suddenly became turbulent and began to slowly revolve around obedient island. Bang! Bang! Following that, a few bolts of lightning flashed across the sky, and in a split second, the wind began to blow violently. The endless dark clouds around the 1,000-mile lake also began to revolve faster and faster. In the blink of an eye, it became a shocking hurricane. The entire demon ghost domain suddenly changed color. Countless demon ghosts looked around in horror and found that they were already in the middle of the hurricane. Endless thunderbolts rumbled in the shocking hurricane. Many demon ghosts found that something was wrong and quickly tried to escape. As a result, they were easily swallowed by the hurricane. The thunderbolts in the hurricane were like heavenly chains, binding each demon ghost and dragging them directly into the hurricane. In an instant, the entire demon ghost region was filled with the miserable cries of ghosts. Even the center of the 1,000-mile lake could hear it clearly, causing people's hairs to stand on end. Yu Qianqiu, who was wrapped in the white light, clenched his fists so hard that his nails dug into his palms. He bit his lips so hard that they bled, and tears welled up in his eyes. A man would not easily shed tears unless he was deeply hurt. Once the demonic ghost execution formation was activated, if he wanted to kill the enemy, he would have to kill his own subordinates first. This was fate. Although all he killed were demonic ghosts, the endless screams that filled the sky and covered the earth were like knives cutting into the flesh of his heart. His heart was bleeding. Chapter 1165. Of course, he knew that the demonic ghosts in the demon ghost realm were prepared to open the demonic ghosts' immortal slaughtering array one day. This was the destiny of the demon ghost realm. However, when the day really came, especially when he, the torture envoy, personally opened the array, he stood in the white light and burst into tears. Listening to the endless miserable howls, his face was covered with tears, and his heart felt as if it was being cut by a knife. Yu Qianqiu suddenly waved his green robe sleeves and fiercely wiped away his tears. He raised one hand to the sky and shouted, "I, Yu Qianqiu, swear to the heavens that in the future, I will exterminate the entire devil Dao and sacrifice countless lives in my demon ghost domain. If I violate this oath, I will be destroyed by the heavens. If I violate this oath by the heavens, and the earth will destroy." When he said the last sentence, he was already choking with sobs, but every word penetrated through the endless mournful wails and reverberated in the sky. The movements in the surroundings were already frightening enough, but he suddenly made such a terrible oath without being forced by anyone. This caused everyone to tremble. Not good. Something is fishy. Yan Juexing immediately recovered from his shock and pointed at Yu Qianqiu and shouted, "Quickly kill him. Quickly kill him. Let's kill him together." This scene caused him to be extremely terrified, and he no longer cared about the lives of his mother and sister. The four great demon kings woke up from their stupor and immediately attacked Yu Qianqiu with all their strength. The army in the sky also attacked with all their might. Countless rays of light burst out at the same time, as if they wanted to make a hole in the ground. The bright light instantly enveloped the entire Shantian island. Boom! The heaven and earth shook, and a huge golden light suddenly soared into the sky, effortlessly blasting away all the attacking lights. The golden light soared into the sky, and a majestic and ancient aura surged out as if it wanted to devour the heaven and earth. Li Tian, Shadow Knight, Blood Shadow, Ying Long, and Yan Juexing all vomited a mouthful of blood as they were sent flying by the recoil. The thousands of wyverns that were blocking the sky above Obedient Island were instantly turned to ash by the golden light. The surrounding wyverns were also sent flying in all directions as if struck by a powerful shockwave. It was unknown how many were killed or injured in a short period of time. At the same time, the water level of Shuntian Island began to drop rapidly, but the water level around it began to rise rapidly. The entire 1,000-mile lake formed into a giant whirlpool, and the wind and waves grew stronger and stronger. Standing in the center of the whirlpool, Shuntian Island revealed its true appearance, like a giant pillar piercing into the lake. Standing on the island, Yu Qianqiu, who was wrapped in white light, looked at them coldly as if he was looking at a dead man. Yan Juexing, who was clutching his chest, turned pale with fright. Not good. Let's go. Let's retreat. He finally realized that the Obedient Island that had shaken the world for countless years was not to be trifled with. Once it showed its might, no matter how high its cultivation base was, it was impossible for them to resist. Seeing the changes in the demon domain becoming more and more shocking, how could he dare to stay any longer? The only thought in his mind was to escape. At this moment, even if he didn't say it, the others wouldn't stay either. Ying Long pulled him up and shouted to his subordinates, who were still in a daze, "Retreat." The few great demon kings quickly dragged Yan Juexing and fled. Those wyverns that could still escape immediately flew away as if they didn't care about their lives. Who would continue to fight with such a terrifying person? The sky here is my sky. The land here is my land. The demon ghost domain here is my demon ghost domain. Here, I am the heaven and earth. If I want you to die, no one can escape, roared Yu Qianqiu as he waved his hand and pointed at the fading light. All of a sudden, the earth-shattering screams from all directions disappeared. The blue sky above the lake was instantly covered by the dark clouds that were approaching at lightning speed. In an instant, the entire lake turned pitch black. The lightning in the sky was like a raging dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Clang! 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 The thunderbolts in the sky were like raging dragons baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. The whirlpool that revolved around the Obedient Island quickly stirred up an endless amount of water mist and produced an incomparably strong suction force. The surrounding dark clouds that contained the energy of countless demons and ghosts were quickly sucked into the whirlpool. It was as majestic as the heavenly river flowing backwards. Suddenly, Li Tian and the others found that they couldn't fly anymore. The suction force behind them was too strong, and it was actually pulling them back. When they looked back at the terrifying whirlpool that seemed to be able to devour everything, they were immediately scared out of their wits. Now, none of them would think that using 4 demon kings to deal with a single Yu Qianqiu was making a mountain out of a molehill. Needless to say, the flying dragon army that was trying to escape had completely lost the ability to resist. They screamed as they were pulled back by the powerful suction force. Those with higher cultivation bases were flapping their wings desperately, trying to escape from this terrifying place. However, the suction force was getting stronger and stronger, and the speed at which they were being pulled back was getting faster and faster. Screams and cries rang out all of a sudden. "What are you screaming for?" Demon King Ying Long shouted angrily. He turned around and said, "Everyone, let's work together and use all our strength. I don't believe we can't break out of this place." As soon as he said this, the demon kings quickly hugged each other and hugged Yan Juexing in the middle. Together, they exerted their strength and moved forward against the cold wind that was as sharp as steel blades. Sure enough, their speed had increased a lot. The remaining flying dragon army also joined together into a huge group. Now that they were united, they could continue flying. The Obedient Island, which was like a huge stone pillar stuck in the center of the lake, rumbled as the endless dark clouds that contained enormous energy poured into it through the whirlpool. Wrapped in a white light, Yu Qianqiu stood at the edge of the Obedient Island, looking down. Up until now, he only knew that the demonic ghost punishing array had been activated. The ultimate move was yet to come, but he didn't know what kind of ultimate move it was. Looking at the slowly rising Obedient Island, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. He originally thought that the reason the obedient island was like a pillar stuck deep in the bottom of the lake was because of a special natural landform. But now, it seemed that this pillar-like obedient island was deliberately inserted here when the array was being laid. He didn't know where they got such a long stone pillar. The dark clouds in the distance suddenly gathered countless bolts of lightning that resembled furious dragons. Guang! 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 The bolts of lightning struck the demon kings and the wyvern army that were trying to escape, as though warning them that no one would be able to easily escape from my hands. The bolts of lightning caused them to wail like ghosts and howl like wolves. The might of the lightning was much greater than the lightning that Yu Qianqiu had cast. The escaping group was immediately split apart. The suction force that was getting stronger and stronger immediately pulled all of them back. The few demon kings tried their best to stabilize themselves, but they could not do anything as they were involuntarily drifted downwards along with the whistling dark clouds. Their cultivation seemed so powerless. All of a sudden, the dark clouds disappeared in front of them, flowing backwards. The sun returned to their eyes, and the suction force immediately decreased. The group of people quickly looked back and saw that the last wisp of dark cloud that looked like black silk had been sucked into the whirlpool. The whirlpool's spinning speed had also slowed down, and the turbulent lake surface was gradually calming down. 1,000-meter-tall stone pillar rose straight up and floated above the lake. There was a golden mist revolving around the huge stone pillar. It was a magnificent sight, like a pillar that supported the heavens. Yu Qianqiu, who was wrapped in white light, stood on top of the tall stone pillar and looked at them. Just as the stone pillar rose out of the lake, all the suction force disappeared. The lake water was still rippling as it reminisced about the surging waves from before. The group looked at each other, and the demon kings looked at each other. Finally, they looked at Yan Juexing, who still had a lingering fear in his heart. They seemed to be asking, "It seems like everything is fine now. Should we continue to kill Yu Qianqiu? Otherwise, it wouldn't be easy to explain to the Demon King 3 nights when they returned." Yan Juexing's expression twitched. This seemed to be a rare opportunity, but he was already scared of Yu Qianqiu. Every time victory was in his grasp, he would be scared to death. He was always the one at a disadvantage. Looking at the strange appearance of that sky-reaching pillar, he didn't dare to give the order to continue. But what if Yu Qianqiu was just trying to scare them? That guy might really do something like that. He was in a dilemma. Suddenly, everyone's pupils shrank. They saw a series of spiderweb-like cracks appear on the towering stone pillar, and large pieces of rock started falling down, creating huge waves on the surface of the lake. A golden object with shining golden patterns gradually revealed its extraordinary appearance. After a large piece of rock fell down and smashed on the surface of the lake, a huge, sharp, golden, diamond-shaped arrowhead was exposed. Golden mist coiled around it, and a majestic, ancient aura of vicissitudes rushed over, causing people's minds to tremble uncontrollably. Not only their bodies, even their souls felt an indescribable fear. It was so oppressive that it almost suffocated them. With one look, it was obvious that it was a terrifying divine object that was so powerful that it made people tremble. Everyone was dumbfounded, but something in Yan Juexing's body seemed to be agitated. He quickly woke up and shouted, "Not good. Run!" Almost at the same time, all the dusty stones fell off, creating huge waves on the surface of the lake. A majestic and terrifying divine weapon stood in the air. It was in the shape of a huge golden divine arrow. The feathers of the arrow were clustered together with golden light. The sword shaft was cast with 6 grooves, and the golden mist coiled around the arrowhead. Not only was it majestic, it was even more ferocious and domineering, looking down on the blue dome of heaven. In the distant past, it had once pulled its bowstring and made the sun and the moon lose their light. Its golden feathers flew and divided time and space. Its former owner was an ancient god named Yi. It once had a name that made all gods tremble, Sky and Earth-Splitting Arrow. Yu Qianqiu, who was wrapped in a bleak white light, stared dumbfoundedly at the divine object beneath his feet. Although he had never seen the heaven-splitting arrow, he knew at first glance that it was the heaven-splitting arrow that had once captivated him. Other than this majestic object in front of him, what else was worthy of being called the heaven-splitting arrow? Chapter 1166. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that the other 9,999 divine swords that he coveted were right next to him. He didn't expect that the great god Yi's heaven and earth splitting arrow was right under his butt, so close to him, but he didn't even know it. Annoyance. Surprise. All kinds of expressions of disbelief appeared on his face. He regretted that he discovered it too late. He felt that the myriad swords demon monarch's joke had gone too far. The obedient island was actually the heaven and earth splitting arrow. So the ultimate move of the demonic ghost slaughtering formation was to inject the energy of countless demonic ghosts into the heaven and earth splitting arrow, using the might of a supreme divine weapon to kill all enemies. Yu Qianqiu, who was wrapped in the white light, suddenly felt that his mind was connected with the heaven and earth splitting arrow. He could feel the endless power in the arrow, a power that could destroy everything. He could also faintly feel the terrifying aura of the golden feather that could split the space and time. Run? Kaka, let's see where you can run to. All of you, leave your lives behind. Yu Qianqiu let out a sky-shaking laughter. He waved his finger and shouted with a majestic voice, "Myriad sword execution. Kill." Boom. The golden feather exploded, and the heaven and earth splitting arrow immediately split into 9,999 divine swords, each shining with divine light, many times more dazzling than the divine sword in Yu Qianqiu's hand. Tens of thousands of swords tore through the air, and tens of thousands of golden specks of light shot out in all directions. The entire 1,000-mile lake was instantly vaporized by the powerful energy. The endless white mist was dispersed by the powerful shockwave, and the entire 1,000-mile lake disappeared in an instant. The power of this attack was simply indescribable. The sky was shaking, and the earth was shaking. Countless living beings in the human world were terrified. The mountains and rivers shifted, and the rivers changed their course. It was as if there was a great earthquake. All the dormant volcanoes or active volcanoes in the human world erupted at the same time. If one looked down from the endless starry sky, one would see spots of red magma on the ground. This was because the heaven and earth splitting arrow had not fully assembled, and this was because the heaven and earth splitting arrow did not absorb enough energy. Otherwise, the entire human world could be destroyed in an instant, or it could bring the entire human world to another space and time. With the great god Yi's cultivation, anything was possible. Demon King Li Tian and the others were swept away by the distorted airflow, drifting about uncontrollably. How could they still escape? Looking at the countless golden flowing lights splitting the sky and earth, the world-shaking momentum was simply unstoppable. All of them were scared out of their wits and screamed wildly. No. The Wyvern army cried out miserably. The 4 demon kings' sorrowful cries shook the heavens. They finally realized that they had attracted a terrifying calamity. What demonic path unifying the 3 realms? At this moment, it seemed so childish. They didn't even have the chance to resist, nor did they have the strength to resist. Yan Juixing's eyes were filled with endless fear and despair. He could not imagine that there was such a terrifying god artifact hidden in the demon realm. How could such a god artifact exist in the human world? He could not imagine that Yu Qianqiu still had such a terrifying ultimate move. Even if the Demon King 3 Knight came personally, he would not be able to block this attack. It was so terrifying that it was beyond imagination. No. Yan Juixing cried out miserably. His pupils shrunk, reflecting the 10,000 golden lights that came instantly. If he was given another chance, he was willing to give up everything and never step into the demon realm again. In an instant, all the screams stopped, and there was only the sound of the world shaking and rumbling. Regardless of whether or not the several tens of thousands of people were struck by the divine swords, they were all turned into ashes when the divine swords brushed past them. The so-called 4 great demon kings were nothing more than a joke who overestimated themselves from the bottom of a well. They were similarly unable to withstand a single blow, and all of them vanished into thin air. Yu Qianqiu, who was wrapped in the white light, was completely fine. However, he was startled by the power of nearly 10,000 divine swords. With one move, the entire 1,000-mile lake disappeared, evaporating in an instant. What kind of demonic expert was this? He was not even worth a fart. The power was simply unimaginable. Yu Qianqiu, whose mouth was dry, was just about to call back those 9,999 divine swords when he suddenly discovered that there was a ball of black light in the midst of the golden sword rain that was trying to escape with something wrapped in it. That terrifying aura that shocked the world appeared again. Yu Qianqiu had an unforgettable memory of this terrifying aura of a sovereign descending upon the world. The scene in the Spirit Fang Valley immediately appeared in his mind. The reason why Yan Zhuixing could come back to life was because he was saved by this black light. Demon God. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. Demon God attacked again. He immediately waved his hand and shouted, "Stop it! Kill it! Don't let it get away!" The 9,999 divine swords immediately blocked the path of retreat of the black light. They surrounded it and slaughtered it. However, the black light was extremely agile. It dodged the sword rain with great agility, as if it did not dare to touch the sharp edge of the divine swords. While it was dodging, the 10,000 divine swords immediately formed a formation and surrounded it tightly like an iron bucket. Just as all the divine swords were about to explode and turn black light into a hedgehog, a loud boom suddenly rang out in the sky, causing the earth to tremble. Yu Qianqiu looked up and saw a huge demon claw directly tearing the space apart. It grabbed the endless darkness and flicked its 5 fingers. Immediately, the 9,999 divine swords were sent flying away in a mess. In the hazy gray fog that suddenly appeared in the void, a pair of slender and huge illusory eyes suddenly appeared. The cold and emotionless eyes looked down indifferently. Demon God. UF** King Bully Us Juniors. What's the use of fighting? If you have the guts, fight with Dao. Yu Qianqiu angrily pointed at the sky and shouted with all his strength. Then, he waved his arms. Nearly 10,000 divine swords that had fallen apart gathered from all directions to form the heaven and earth splitting arrow that shone with divine light. The demon claw that tore the space apart set off endless wind and clouds. Just when it was about to grab the black light and take it away, Yu Qianqiu shouted angrily. The heaven and earth splitting arrow stabbed into the back of the hand of the huge demon claw. The demon claw trembled. Obviously, it was hurt. With a shake, it shook away the heaven and earth splitting arrow and temporarily gave up on saving the black light. The huge devil claw quickly changed direction, blotting out the sky as it clawed towards Yu Qianqiu. F***ck your ancestors. Yu Qianqiu cursed. Just when he was about to run away, there was another loud bang in the sky. A huge golden dragon claw covered with golden scales tore the space apart and grabbed the wrist of the huge demon claw. The 2 hands were in a stalemate in the air. Yu Qianqiu was also very bold. He was slightly stunned and thought, could it be that I also have a powerful backer who came to save me? So he gathered his courage and waited. In fact, he was worried that the heaven and earth splitting arrow that he had just obtained would be taken away by the demon god. He quickly called the heaven and earth splitting arrow back. The divine arrow that was connected with his mind quickly shrank under the control of his mind. Knight. Have you forgotten our agreement? How dare you personally intervene in the affairs of the human world? Isn't it unfair? An ancient voice rumbled in the air. Coiling dragon. It's you who broke the agreement. How dare you move the heaven and earth splitting arrow from another time and space to boost the power? How can it be fair? Do you think I'm afraid of you? Another cold and ruthless voice rumbled in the air. Knight. You secretly sent your demon blade to the human world to wait for a chance. Do you think we don't know? You sent the demon blade first, then we sent the heaven and earth splitting arrow later. What's unfair about that? The ancient voice sounded again, but there was a hint of questioning in it. Coiling dragon. The power of the heaven and earth splitting arrow is far stronger than my demon blade. Is this fair? Also, How do you explain that you sent the star bead down? The cold and ruthless voice questioned back. The star bead belongs to the virtuous. It has been like this since ancient times. Whoever gets it is the one with the ability. There is no bias. Moreover, the heaven and earth splitting arrow was given to your descendants. Don't tell me you don't know. Otherwise, with your personality, I'm afraid you wouldn't have waited until today to tell me about the heaven and earth splitting arrow. It's your descendants who didn't have the fortune to enjoy it and left it here. As a result, it fell into the hands of others. How can you blame us? The ancient voice said calmly and reasonably. This is obviously a trap designed by you. You've gone too far. The cold and ruthless voice said sternly. If you want to twist words and force logic, then there's nothing we can do. You and I will go find Tao together and argue with him. Let's see how he decides. As the ancient voice fell, the huge golden dragon claw loosened its demon claw and retracted back into the torn space. The pitch-black space crack instantly closed up. The cold eyes in the sky saw that the black light had already escaped. It didn't say anything else. It seemed that the bickering was to buy time for the black light to escape. The demon claw also retracted back into the torn space crack. The cold eyes clearly turned and stared at Yu Qianqiu, who raised his head to look at the sky with his mouth agape. Then, the cold eyes disappeared and the sky returned to normal. After a long while, Yu Qianqiu's lifeless eyes slowly moved and he gradually came to his senses. He casually wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and mumbled with a dry mouth, "Damn it. I'm not dreaming, am I? Could it be that the demon god and the coiling dragon god were talking just now?" Although he knew that what happened just now was definitely real, he still didn't dare to believe it. What was terror? This was true terror. They were amazing people who could casually tear open space and appear. All the experts he had seen before were simply trash in front of them. The difference in ability between the two was like the difference between heaven and earth. What demon monarch 3 nights? He could easily block the passage to a realm. Compared to these terrifying fellows from the immortal realm, they were simply not worth mentioning. Not good. Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised his head and looked around. The shadow of the black light was already nowhere to be seen. He immediately stomped his feet and cursed, "Yan Juexing. I'll give it to you. You actually summoned the demon god from the immortal realm to save you. There's no way to fight this battle anymore." Chapter 1167. After cursing for a while, Yu Qianqiu became more and more discouraged. It wasn't that he couldn't fight anymore, but that he really couldn't fight anymore. He had repeatedly killed Yan Juexing, and the demon god had once again helped Yan Juexing. If this continued, what use would it be even if he was more powerful? Especially this time, it was even more exaggerated. The demon god had brazenly attacked him without regard for his identity. It was terrifying. He even suspected that the demon god was sick. He had left his descendants trapped in the demon realm for so many years, and yet he had to go against a nobody like him time and time again for Yan Juexing. It was simply too ridiculous. He finally understood that in front of an expert like the god fiend, it would be useless no matter where he hid. Be it in the 3 realms, the divine ruin realm, or Utopia, the god fiend could just tear through space and kill him. Where could he escape to? If not for God Coiling Dragon stopping him, he would have died even if he had flashed to Utopia. However, he felt a little relieved when he thought about it. After all, God Coiling Dragon had stopped him at the critical moment. Otherwise, he would have really been finished. In fact, he did not know that he had insulted the demon god and even F***ed his ancestors, but the demon god did not do anything to him. However, he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth and actually used the heaven-splitting arrow to attack the demon god. It should be known that the heaven-splitting arrow was not an ordinary divine weapon. That had also hurt the demon god. Even in the divine realm, not many people dared to do that to him, let alone in the mortal world. It would be strange if he did not attack in anger. Putting himself in the demon god's shoes, he would have done the same. In fact, he should feel honored. In the three realms and the divine realm, who could still survive after cursing and hitting the demon god? He was the only one. Yu Qianqiu was a little too pessimistic. Although the demon god was ruthless, he had his pride. After all, he was known as the #1 expert in the divine realm. The protective demonic light that he had injected into Yan Zhuixing could only protect him 3 times. After those 3 times, he would no longer be able to help Yan Zhuixing. If a person who had been given 3 chances to be reborn could not be supported, then to a proud person like the God Fiend, he was simply a piece of trash. It was impossible for him to repeatedly intervene in the lower realm from the immortal realm for such a piece of trash. No matter what, he would not be able to explain himself. No matter how powerful and terrifying the demon god was, life was still how it should be. Yu Qianqiu soon found something exciting again. After all, he had obtained the remaining 9,999 divine swords. Now that the 10,000 swords were gathered, it would be strange if he was not happy. Yu Qianqiu put away the heaven's eye mirror and happily played with the heaven-splitting earth arrow that had shrunk to a meter long. Suddenly, he let out a cry of surprise. He saw that the dazzling divine light on the heaven-splitting earth arrow was gradually dimming, and soon after, it became incomparably heavy. As the divine arrow turned into an ancient light gold color, the entire sword became inconceivably heavy. He clenched his teeth and held on for a while, but he could no longer hold on to it. What's going on? Yu Qianqiu suddenly panicked. Just now, he felt that he was connected with the heaven-splitting ear-splitting arrow. But now, the connection was completely severed. He quickly dodged. The entire 1,000-mile lake had completely dried up. The original bottom of the lake had cracked into pieces. Although the divine arrow had shrunk, it was too heavy. It had sunk deep into the soil. However, Yu Qianqiu had the help of the earth formula. He quickly found it more than 10 meters underground. He hugged it a few times, but he still could not move it. So, he quickly opened up a space underground. He circled around the divine arrow that was lying quietly on the ground. Was it because he put away the heavenly eye mirror? Yu Qianqiu took out the heavenly eye mirror and once again used the method to activate the demonic ghost immortal punishing array. A hazy white light shone on the divine arrow. However, the divine arrow lay there peacefully. It did not move at all. He shone the heavenly eye mirror several times, but there was no reaction. Then, he recalled the scene when he pulled the divine sword out of immortal crocodile's body at the bottom of the lake. At first, he could not move it. It was only after he absorbed his blood that it recognized him as its master. Yu Qianqiu touched his chin and nodded thoughtfully. He felt that this should be the case. So, he made up his mind and cut his right index finger. He squatted on the ground and continuously smeared his blood on the divine arrow. In the end, the blood that he squeezed out almost covered the entire divine arrow. He waited for a long time, but the divine arrow still lay there motionless. Damn it. It can't be. Even if you want to fool me, you can't fool me like this. Yu Qianqiu felt like crying as he sucked on his bitten finger. He had wasted a lot of blood, but the divine arrow did not appreciate it at all. He had painstakingly obtained the divine arrow, but he could not control it. It was no different from scrap metal. How was he going to fight with this thing that he could not even move? Yu Qianqiu sat down on the opposite side of the divine arrow dejectedly. He looked at the divine arrow in a daze. He was indignant, very indignant. What was in his hands was not his. There was no way he could explain it. His listless eyes were filled with infinite grief. Suddenly, his gaze focused. He found that among the 6 pairs of symmetrical arrows that were clustered by whiskers, one side seemed to be missing a slanted feather compared to the other side. Upon closer inspection, each feather was an extremely miniaturized version of a divine sword. Yu Qianqiu's eyes immediately brightened. He impatiently took out his divine sword and kept shouting, "Little, little, little." When the divine sword shrunk to the same size as the feather in his hand, he held it in his hand and lay on the ground with his butt sticking up. Then, he carefully filled the empty space with the extremely small divine sword. At the moment when the sword was inserted, a clear and bright sound reverberated in the small underground space. The sound was so crisp and sweet that it could cleanse people's hearts. A majestic aura was like the morning bell and evening drum, telling the truth of the endless cycle of the sun rising and setting. The entire divine arrow surged up and down with a swish, flowing golden light, as if a dead thing had regained its vitality. Yu Qianqiu sat up straight and rubbed his hands excitedly, as if he had seen a peerless beauty and could not wait to kiss her. Suddenly, a strange phenomenon occurred. A fan-shaped ray of light shot out from the divine arrow and shone in the underground space. In the golden light, a tall and strong man appeared. He had bronze skin and was wearing a leopard skin shirt that covered half of his body, covering his knees. An ancient vine was tied around his waist. His arms and half of his shoulders were exposed. He did not wear pants or shoes. He was barefooted on the ground, and the soles of his feet were wide. The muscles on his arms, chest, and legs undulated like big rocks in the ravine, appearing very full and powerful. His hair was pinned up with a beast tooth. His resolute face exuded a sense of sincerity and simplicity. His thick lips made people feel very at ease. He had an amiable and simple appearance, but there was a cloud pattern on his forehead that sparkled like starlight. On his shoulder, there was a seven-colored curved bow that looked strong and powerful like the roots of an old tree. The bowstring was like a psychedelic star, but it was slanted on his back, making people unable to see the bow clearly. A quiver was carried on his back, and inside the quiver, there were 9 arrows with more than half of their golden feathers exposed. Judging from the shape of the feathers, it was exactly the same as the arrow of Genesis. This man who suddenly appeared in the golden light and shadow did not have any hostility. He always gave people a feeling of peace and serenity, without any pressure. He looked exactly like a hunter, but the extraordinary bow and arrow, and the cloud pattern that was shining like stars on his forehead, all proved that this man had an extraordinary background. Yu Qianqiu sat on the ground in a daze, looking up at him with his mouth wide open. After a long while, he smacked his lips, swallowed his saliva, and asked weakly, You are the great god Yi? The man looked at him with a faint and kind smile, and replied in a simple and plain manner, Hello. My name is Yi. Oh my god. It really is the great god Yi. Yu Qianqiu crawled up to his feet, patted the dirt off his butt, and wiped his hands on his clothes. It had been a long time since he had heard the word hello, so he subconsciously wanted to flatter and shake hands with a senior leader. Only when he stretched out his hand did he realize that this was not the place to do it. He nodded and bowed, That. Old man, didn't you die already? He did not feel any hostility from the man, and he had never met such a senior person who did not put on airs. So he decided not to hide anything and spoke his mind directly. The eternal universe is endless. Life is death, and death is life. The great god Yi looked at him and smiled warmly, It seems that you know me. It is right to say that I am dead. After all, I no longer exist in the universe in the form of a physical body. But it is also wrong to say that I am completely dead. My 3 souls and 7 spirits are attached to the supreme god Bao, and the other 2 souls and 7 spirits are attached to the 9 heaven and earth splitting arrows. When the supreme god Bao and the 9 heaven and earth splitting arrows reunite, it will be the time of my rebirth. Amazing. Amazing. Yu Qianqiu was full of praise. He clasped his hands in front of his chest like a fan who saw his idol. It was so comfortable to chat with this super expert who answered everything asked and spoke without beating around the bush. Suddenly, he pointed at himself and said, Then why did you suddenly come out to see me? Do you have any advice for me? His eyes were already gradually shining, and he suspected that the man was going to teach him some peerless martial arts. I didn't come to see you, and I don't have any advice for you. The great god Yi answered. Yu Qianqiu's expression froze. He thought that the great god Yi did not know how to be more tactful with his words. He then smiled and said, Then what is it? When the thousands of swords reunited to form the heaven and earth splitting arrow, I suddenly felt the breath of an unfamiliar expert from the arrow. A very powerful expert. It was this strong breath that woke me up from my deep sleep. The great god Yi looked at Yu Qianzhou and shook his head. I didn't expect you to have the star orb that was made from Tao. But it is not you. You are too weak. You are not the strange expert that had the ability to wake me up. I have the star orb. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly than the onlooker. He was sitting on a mountain of treasures, but he did not know it. Now that this layer of window paper was suddenly revealed, he shivered and immediately understood that the golden orb in his body was the star orb. No wonder it was so magical. It was said that the owner of the star orb could become a god. Could it be that I will become a god in the end? Chapter 1168. All kinds of inexplicable excitement surged in him, making him tremble with excitement. However, it was only for a short while before he suddenly thought of the tens of thousands of graves lying quietly in the barrier of gods. There were many god-tier experts resting in those graves, and even those who were conferred the title of god were killed by others. It seemed that gods were not that valuable after all. Looking at this awesome person in front of him, who could split a spacetime with one arrow, and the demon god and the coiling dragon god who came to the human world with one arm, they could also tear the void at any time. Therefore, the little bit of excitement disappeared instantly. It seemed that becoming a god was just like that. Even among the gods, there were big shots. Life was the same no matter where one went. Tell me, before the heaven and earth splitting arrow was completely fused, did you come into contact with any experts? Great God Yi looked at him and asked sincerely. Perhaps it was more appropriate to say that he was asking for advice. Yu Qianzhou blinked his eyes. Those who were killed before the fusion of the heaven and earth splitting arrow were definitely not the so-called experts that Great God Yi mentioned. Other than them, it would be the coiling dragon god and the demon god. However, the coiling dragon god did not come into contact with the heaven and earth splitting arrow. Only the demon god and the demon god had fought with the heaven and earth splitting arrow. Since Great God Yi was sincere, Yu Qianzhou did not dare to make a rash judgment. So, he said tentatively, just now, the coiling dragon god appeared. Coiling dragon? Great God Yi was startled, then he shook his head slightly and said, not coiling dragon. I am very familiar with coiling dragon's aura, and this person is stronger than coiling dragon. He has a strong destructive power, not any of the original great gods. It should be someone else. As soon as this was said, Yu Qianzhou immediately said with certainty, there is another person who appeared. I heard that it is the number one expert in the divine world, the demon god Yi. Just now, he did fight against the heaven and earth splitting arrow, but it was the coiling dragon god who stopped it. Maybe the heaven and earth splitting arrow was contaminated with his aura. Divine world? Demon god Yi? The number one expert in the divine world? Is it an expert from another space-time? Great God Yi thought for a while and shook his head slowly. It seems that I have been away for too long. I don't understand what you are talking about. Young man, can you explain it to me? Yu Qianzhou was stunned for a moment and then he understood. When the great god Yi Jiujin divided the 10 spaces, there were only the 72 worlds of the human world and the underworld. The immortal world, the underworld, or the divine world did not exist. Of course, people did not know what was going on. Hee. It's like this. Yu Qianzhou immediately told her the legend of how the great god Yi shot the sun and forced everyone to open up the immortal realm and then the god realm. Then, he roughly told her the story about the devil god that he heard from Grandma Yen. Finally, he asked, is the devil god really that powerful? Can you beat him? So that's how it is. Why did Tao do this? Great God Yi murmured to himself and then looked at Yu Qianzhou and said with a smile, this devil god is really powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to wake me up from my long sleep. It turns out that the remaining people are indeed not his match. Even though he's the number one expert in the god realm right now, there's still quite a gap between us. At the very least, his cultivation hasn't reached the level where the war god could summon 10 suns with a single rage. If the war god wasn't my match, then he naturally won't be my match either. Although he was flaunting his higher cultivation, he didn't sound like he was boasting at all. Instead, he gave off the feeling of being realistic and honest, just like his appearance, not arrogant nor discouraged. But I heard a saying that, Tao, is the real #1 expert, Yu Qianqiu asked awkwardly and weakly. Could it be that, Tao, is also not a match for the devil god? Are you more powerful than Tao? Tao? The great god Yi looked at Yu Qianqiu strangely. He seemed to be wondering why Yu Qianqiu didn't know anything about the Tao, since he could come into contact with the coiling dragon and the devil god. Then, he smiled and said, no one can be a match for the Tao, not even me. However, the Tao won't treat anyone as an opponent because there is no opponent in the Tao. He said something but did not make it clear. Instead, it made Yu Qianqiu confused. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became. Great God Yi smiled and said, thank you for solving my confusion. We will meet again if fate allows it. He was about to leave. Yu Qianqiu was shocked and hurriedly shouted, Senior Yi, please wait. I have something to ask. Great God Yi paused and smiled, what is it? Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He slapped his forehead as he did not remember what he wanted to ask. Then he asked awkwardly, I wonder if you know Chang Yi? Who is Chang Yi? Great God Yi was stunned. Then, Yu Qianqiu made an arc on his chest and reminded, she is a woman. I heard she is a very beautiful woman. Senior Yi, do you remember? He asked this because he wanted to confirm the legend of his previous life. If there was really a beautiful woman like Chang Yi in this world, he must not miss the chance. He must meet her and see how beautiful she was. A beautiful woman called Chang Yi? The great God Yi thought about it seriously. After a while, he shook his head and said, I've never seen or heard of her. From what you're saying, she's from the same era as me? Yu Qianqiu was speechless. However, compared to when he had activated the ghost demon immortal punishing formation, the difference was like heaven and earth. This was undoubtedly because it had absorbed the energy of the ghosts in the demon ghost domain. He finally understood that the divine arrow would be more powerful in the hands of people with higher cultivation. He still could not unleash the true power of this divine arrow. After a moment of excitement, Yu Qianqiu put away the divine arrow and looked around. His face sank again. He quickly flew above the demon ghost domain to examine the demon ghost domain after the demon ghost immortal punishment formation was activated. Not only had the entire 1,000 miles lake dried up, but there was not a trace of green in the vast demon ghost domain. There were collapsed mountains everywhere. Every piece of land seemed to have been plowed. The earth was twisted, and there was no trace of life. The endless dark clouds that covered the sky of the demon ghost domain had disappeared without a trace. This place had become a completely new world. The demon ghost domain had completely disappeared. There was a hole in the ground that was still howling with cold wind. It was the entrance of the 9 netherworld cavern. Yu Qianqiu's eyebrows slightly trembled. It was unknown what he thought of, but he immediately rushed back to Obedient Island. Seeing that the demon world seal at the bottom of the 1,000 miles lake was still intact, he let out a sigh of relief. At first, he was worried that the power of the ghost demon immortal punishing formation would be too great and that the demon world seal would be opened. But now, it seemed that the water of the 1,000 miles lake had blocked some of its power. Adding on the fact that the demon world seal was not made of ordinary metal and stone, it was able to withstand it. Just as he let out a sigh of relief, he thought of the turmoil in the world. He was worried that the mortal world had been affected, so he quickly teleported to various places in the mortal world to check. As a result, he found that it had indeed affected the mortal world. Many places seemed to have experienced a great earthquake. Many houses had collapsed, and deaths were inevitable. However, the disaster was still within the range that the mortal world could bear. Yu Qianqiu went to the place where his parents lived and found that they had not been affected. He couldn't help but let out a sigh. He could only hope that this was the last disaster he would bring to the mortal world in exchange for eternal peace. He was still standing in the canopy of the big tree behind his parents' house, watching as his parents helped a family whose house had collapsed in the village. He looked into the distance, where a volcano had suddenly erupted, and there was still billowing black smoke that had yet to subside. Seeing the volcano, he suddenly thought of the dragon under the drum of dusk in the demon ghost domain. Chapter 1169. The various restrictions in Twilight Valley had already been completely destroyed. The valley that had been engraved with drawings had already collapsed and been buried. Yu Qianqiu, who used both the metal art and earth art, quickly found the entrance to the green fire forbidden land. After discovering that the underground space was intact, he did not clear out the buried entrance. Instead, he used the metal art and earth art to seal the entrance. This was because from now on, this place was no longer the demon domain. Sooner or later, mortals would come here. He did not want the affairs of the cultivation world to cause any trouble for mortals. After escaping into the green fire forbidden land, Yu Qianqiu looked at the still rising blue flames. He had not expected that the opening of the demonic ghost immortal killing formation would attract the coiled dragon god and the demon god, and even see the great god Yi. With the appearance of these three big shots, Yu Qianqiu was no longer as terrified of the divine dragon trapped underground as he was before. He silently charged into the green fire, walked to the hole in the ground that was spewing green fire, looked down, and directly jumped in. Yu Qianqiu passed through the tunnel of blue fire with ease. There was a flash of red light in front of him. It was still the same river of molten lava that he had first seen. In the vast and majestic underground world of molten lava, 9 huge blue lotus flowers bloomed on the flowing river of molten lava. The rolling blue flames came from the 9 blue lotus flowers. 8 of them were still in bud, and 1 of them had completely bloomed. There was a faint layer of arc-shaped light covering it. Among the layers of petals, there was a green lotus head, and on it lay a naked child who was sleeping soundly with his legs spread out. The child was still the same child. Yu Qianqiu recognized him at a glance. After so many years, he did not seem to have grown up at all. Yu Qianqiu flashed down with a smirk and landed on the blue lotus head. He gently kicked the child's buttocks and shouted, "Fat boy, I'm back." The naked child turned over reluctantly and murmured, "Why is it noisy again? It was so loud at the beginning. It scared me to death. It took me so much effort to fall asleep." He paused before he could finish his sentence. He seemed to feel that the sound was familiar. It did not seem to be the earth-shattering noise from before. He frowned and rubbed his eyes with the back of his chubby hand. Then, he opened his sleepy eyes. It would have been better if he hadn't opened his eyes, but the moment he opened them, he saw a face smiling at him. This face was both unfamiliar and left a deep impression on him. It was the second person he had seen in his life. Instantly, he jumped up as if he had taken some strong medicine. TCH. Without saying anything, he kicked Yu Qianqiu. He didn't lose out at all. He was not at a disadvantage at all. Then he jumped directly into the red river of boiling lava and pointed at Yu Qianqiu. "It's you again, you fire thief. What do you want?" Yu Qianqiu chuckled. He found that although the fat boy's appearance had not changed, he was obviously more experienced in speaking. He folded his arms and smiled. "Go and call your grandfather out. Tell him I want to see him." Humph. The fat boy turned his head disdainfully and swam freely in the rolling lava river. It seemed that he was asking why he should listen to him. "Little brat, you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit." Yu Qianqiu smirked. He opened his 5 claws and directly pulled the extremely arrogant fat boy from the boiling lava river. He grabbed his neck and sneered. "You have guts. You actually dare to kick me. Today, I will teach you a lesson." The fat boy's face turned red from being choked. His eyes were filled with fear. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and directly smashed him back into the boiling lava river. The fat boy, who had sunk into the lava, quickly popped his head out to take a look at him. Then, he plunged into the boiling river and disappeared. The smile on Yuchincho's face disappeared. He folded his arms and stood silently in the middle of the blooming green lotus. He looked left and right and was on guard. Although he had 3 top masters in his heart, he still had no confidence in facing the trapped dragon god. He did not know the other party's temper at all, so he had to be careful. Not long after, the surging undercurrents in the lava river attracted his attention. The surface of the river surged in circles silently. As the surging grew larger and larger, Yuchincho's pupils suddenly shrank. He still felt uneasy and nervous. After all, dragons had left a deep impression on him in his previous life. That majesty was engraved in the bones of every Chinese man and woman. Suddenly, 2 huge, malevolent antlers rose up from the magma. Bang! The magma splashed everywhere, and a huge dragon head directly rushed out. A huge scaled body stretched out from the surface of the magma river. The huge dragon head slightly retracted and looked down majestically. It had a forehead that bulged like armor, a sharp nose, fangs that couldn't be covered even if it closed its mouth, and 2 catfish whiskers as thick as thighs. Its entire body was covered in a layer of bright red armor, and its 2 eyes that were as bright as lanterns stared downward, making people feel as if their souls couldn't move away. This was the power of a dragon. The naked fat boy who was standing between the ferocious antlers pointed down and shouted, "Grandpa! It's him! He's back to bully me again." The red dragon fiercely breathed out 2 red flames from its nostrils and breathed back. Its body climbed up again, and its huge snake-like body rose again. The ferocious antlers on its head almost reached the top of the rock. At the same time, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. 2 sharp, mighty, and terrifying claws rose from the magma. 2 golden chains locked onto the claws' wrists. "Human! How dare you come here and offend me again?" The red dragon's nostrils once again spewed out 2 streams of flames to show its majesty. Its rumbling voice echoed in the underground magma canyon. "Do you know the consequences of offending the dignity of the dragon clan?" It clenched its 2 huge claws forcefully, which was a little scary. Yuchincho felt the majestic dragon's aura and adapted to it for a while. After calming down, he looked at the golden chains that locked the dragon's claws in the lava river. Then, he braced himself and looked at the pair of bright and terrifying big eyes that were looking down at him. He smiled faintly and said, "Before I came here, I met the coiling dragon god." With just this sentence, the terrifying and oppressive aura emitted by the red dragon suddenly weakened, and Yuchincho immediately felt a lot more relaxed. He knew that it was useful to carry the opponent's top boss out. He thought to himself that the coiling dragon god was indeed the supreme of the dragon race. The red dragon stared at him silently for a while, and then slowly sank into the lava river. The naked boy on its head immediately said anxiously, "Grandpa! Hit him quickly! Help me hit him quickly!" However, the huge dragon's body completely sank into the lava. The fat boy swayed a few times on the surface of the river and shouted, "Grandpa," several times, but there was no response. He looked at Yuchincho, who was on the green lotus in the fire, and quickly hid in the lava. Yuchincho was a little dumbfounded. He scratched his face and asked himself, "It's not that bad, right?" Just by using the name of the coiling dragon god, he immediately made the other party feel so ashamed that he didn't dare to show his face. You should at least ask whether it's true or not. Suddenly, a magnificent red light shone on the surface of the lava river, and a mighty old man with a red beard, red eyebrows, red hair, red clothes, and red skin rose from the red light. His whole body was fiery red, except for the 2 golden iron chains on his wrists. The red light on the surface of the river also quickly converged into his body as he rose. The red old man dragged the bracelets and flashed to the green lotus, standing face to face with Yuchincho. Yuchincho looked at the golden iron chains on his wrists and realized that this old man should be the incarnation of the red dragon just now. Just as Yuchincho was about to pluck up his courage to ask, the other party first lowered his head and sighed, saying in an extremely ashamed tone, "I can feel it." The demonic spirit punishing array outside has been activated, and the coiling dragon ancestor has also arrived. I can feel the supreme aura of the dragon race from the patriarch, but I have no face to see him, so I can only hide underground and don't dare to make a sound. With the patriarch's cultivation, he must have also sensed that I'm here, but he didn't summon me. He must think that I've embarrassed the dragon race and doesn't want to see me again. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He thought to himself, so that's how it is. He already knows that the coiling dragon god has arrived. It seems that calling the coiling dragon god has hit the soft spot of the red dragon old man. Just as he was about to use the name of the coiling dragon god to intimidate the old man and ask what was going on, he saw the red dragon old man open his big mouth and wail loudly. He cried so sadly that tears flowed down his old face. The entire underground lava canyon was filled with his rumbling cries. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing opposite him, finally experienced what a deafening cry was. The fat child, who had secretly popped his head out of the lava river, was dumbfounded when he saw this scene. Grandpa is actually crying in front of that person? Yu Qianqiu was also a little dumbfounded. He didn't expect to see the underground dragon god in such a way. He was originally a little cautious and nervous, but when the old man cried, the tall, mighty, and sacred image of the dragon in his heart was completely gone. Cough, cough. Yu Qianqiu coughed awkwardly and comforted him. Don't cry. Tell me what you've been through first. It would have been fine if he hadn't mentioned the word "had been through," but the moment he mentioned it, the red dragon old man cried even more heartbreakingly. He stomped his feet and wailed, "I've been tricked by that bastard Yi Tiankong. That bastard lied to me so badly. I didn't complete the mission that the coiling dragon patriarch gave me. Instead, I've been trapped here for more than 100,000 years and lost the supreme dignity of the dragon race." Yu Qianqiu's teeth ached as he dug his ears. He wanted to see if his earwax had come out. He looked at his little finger. Fortunately, it wasn't. He wanted to ask what the mission that the coiling dragon patriarch gave him was, but the old man's cries were getting louder and louder. He couldn't communicate at all when he was sad. He immediately roared angrily, "Cry your mother. If you continue to cry, the coiling dragon god will lose all face. The entire dragon race will lose all face because of you." You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.